The first thing I noticed was that Mallory had put my records in grocery boxes. Not proper moving boxes, grocery boxes. One still had canned peaches printed across the side, and my copy of Kinda Blue was sticking out where somebody had forced the lid down. "Put those back," I said. Mallory stood in the doorway of my room, with both hands planted on her hips. She was 36 years old, but in that moment I could see every age she had ever been, especially the ages that believed volume and certainty were the same thing. "Grant starts Monday. He needs a door he can close. He has a bedroom door. You know he can't work in there." Behind her, Grant studied a loose thread on his sleeve. My work table had already been cleared. The small brass screws from a radio I was repairing sat loose in a cereal bowl. "This room isn't available," I said. Mallory gave a short laugh. "Then give him your room or leave. Mom and I are tired of you acting like this whole house belongs to you." Upstairs, a drawer slammed, then another. We all heard the zipper of the large blue suitcase Ruth and I had taken to Arizona the year before. Mallory's face changed. Only slightly, but I saw relief move through it. She thought her mother was packing for me. 7 months earlier, Grant had called me from the parking lot of a sporting goods store and asked whether I knew anything about alternators. I knew enough to ask why he was in a sporting goods store parking lot at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning. "Lunch meeting," he said. "At a sporting goods store?" "The restaurant's next door." I was sitting at the back work table with a lamp turned sideways and the casing off an old Zenith radio. Ruth was in the other chair with her feet tucked under her, reading a murder mystery and eating crackers over a napkin because she had strong opinions about crumbs and weaker control around Rosemary. "Who is it?" she asked. I covered the phone. "Grant. Car trouble." Her eyes stayed on the book. "Of course. What's it doing?" I asked him. "Nothing. A click." Then another click that sounded less committed. "That's not how alternators usually introduce themselves. I'm telling you what I know, Daniel." He called me Daniel when he was embarrassed. When things were going well, I was Dan. I put the radio faceplate on a towel and reached for my keys. Ruth turned a page. "You're going. I'm going to look." "Those are different verbs. If it's the battery, I can jump him in 5 minutes. If it's not, then I'll know it's not." She looked up at me over her glasses. Ruth could make silence feel like a deposition. She was 61 then, with gray beginning at her temples and the same dark eyes that had persuaded me to dance at a wedding in 1985, despite my having no ability and a pulled muscle in my back. "You had lunch plans," she said. "With you." "Yes." I was looking forward to them. "We can still go." She looked at the open radio, then at my keys. "Bring me fries." Grant was standing beside his car when I arrived, wearing a blue sport coat and holding his tie in one fist. He had always been a big man, broad through the shoulders, but that morning the coat seemed to be holding him up instead of the other way around. The hood was open. "You already checked the battery terminals?" He stared at me. "So no." I opened the hood. I thought that communicated readiness. I wiggled the negative terminal, loose. "You've got a wrench?" "In the car." "Where?" He opened the trunk. There was a golf umbrella, 1 boot, 2 reusable shopping bags, a case of mineral water, and a boxed air fryer. I pointed to the single boot. "You lose an argument with a river? That's Mallory's." "The air fryer? Also Mallory's." "Wrench?" He leaned against the trunk. "The car may not contain a wrench. I got mine." 2 minutes later, I tightened the terminal and the engine started. Grant didn't smile. That was when I understood the car was not why he had called. He closed the hood carefully. I didn't have a lunch meeting, I figured. You could have said that before I put on the jacket. I wanted to see how far the story went. He rubbed both hands over his face. "I'm out." "Out of what?" "The business, the job, all of it." Grant had spent 9 years helping run a restaurant with a man named Curtis Vale, who wore expensive watches and referred to himself as a founder, even though he had inherited the place from an uncle. Grant handled suppliers, schedules, repairs, and the 100 small emergencies that allow a dining room to look serene. Curtis handled the photographs. What happened, we disagreed about, whether I was an employee or a punching bag. I waited. Grant kicked lightly at the front tire. I may have told him he'd be serving microwave soup in a laundromat without me. Accurate? Probably. Helpful? No. Did you quit, or did he fire you? That distinction became fuzzy around the third use of the word parasite. He tried to laugh, but his face folded in the wrong place. Grant could be vain and stubborn. He could also remember exactly how Ruth took her coffee and drive 40 minutes to help my brother carry a couch without being asked. People like tidy categories because they save time. Grant had never saved anybody much time. "Does Mallory know?" I asked. He shook his head. "You need to tell her. I'm going to." "When?" I was hoping the car would stay dead a little longer. I took him to lunch, not to the restaurant beside the sporting goods store. We went to a diner with sticky menus and a waitress who called everyone honey, including a police officer who looked unhappy about it. Grant ordered coffee and didn't touch it. "How bad?" I asked. He moved the sugar container exactly 1 inch to the left. "Depends on your definition. Mine includes numbers." He had 3 weeks of pay coming, maybe. The ownership percentage Curtis had dangled for years had never become anything more than conversations. Mallory's income could cover their mortgage and basic expenses, but not for long, and certainly not with the loans Grant had taken out after believing the promised partnership was finally happening. I kept my face still. He noticed anyway. "Go ahead." "Go ahead, what? Say I was stupid." "You already know. Thanks." "You want me to lie?" "No, I want you to say it in a warmer tone." I told him he and Mallory could come over that evening. We would sit down, eat something, and talk through the next few weeks. "I'm not asking you for money. I didn't offer." That offended him more than it should have, which told me money was exactly what he had been afraid of asking for. When I came home, Ruth was at the kitchen counter, slicing an apple so thin you could nearly read through it. A paper bag from the diner sat beside her. "The fries are cold," she said. "They were warm when I left. You stopped somewhere." I drove around with Grant. She set the knife down. "How bad?" This was one of the reasons I had stayed married to Ruth for 38 years. I could bring home a man's cold French fries and one sentence, and she would find the whole building behind them. He lost his job. Lost, left under pressure, quit after being provoked. Quit dramatically. There may have been a parasite. She closed her eyes. "They're coming for dinner," I said. "Tonight? I thought we could talk." "We?" "The 4 of us." Ruth picked up one of the cold fries and bit the end. "You already offered something." "I offered dinner." "Daniel, I said we'd help them think through the next few weeks." That sentence is wearing a fake mustache. I opened the refrigerator and pretended to inspect the mustard. Ruth said, "How much?" I didn't offer money. Her shoulders dropped a little. They may need somewhere to stay. They went right back up. I explained the mortgage, the loans, the 3 weeks of uncertain pay. Ruth listened without interrupting, which was more worrying than interruption. She finished one apple slice, wiped the knife, and put it in the drawer. "For how long?" "We haven't discussed it." "That means you have discussed it, just without numbers." I was thinking 8 weeks. "Why 8? "Long enough for Grant to find work. Short enough that nobody gets comfortable." Ruth looked toward the hallway that led to the guest bedroom. It was a pleasant room, if you did not object to floral curtains or the fact that the closet contained 3 decades of Christmas decorations. "You remember when Mallory stayed for 10 days after the plumbing problem?" she asked. That was different. It became 5 weeks. The contractor found mold, and our daughter found cable television. She has her own television now. You always become literal when you're losing. I leaned against the counter. "They're in trouble. I know. They're not strangers. I know that too. We have the room." Ruth's gaze shifted past me toward the back of the house, toward the narrow room, where my radio waited in pieces and her book lay face down beside the second chair. "We have rooms," she said. "That doesn't mean they're all available." At dinner, Mallory arrived angry on Grant's behalf, which was her favorite way to arrive anywhere. She dropped her purse on a chair and said Curtis had exploited him for years. Grant said that was not entirely fair. Mallory told him not to defend Curtis. Grant said he wasn't. She told him he was minimizing. He asked if he could at least sit down before being interpreted. Ruth served roast chicken and green beans. Nobody mentioned moving in until the plates were nearly clean. Then I said, "Your mother and I think you should stay here while Grant looks for work." Ruth's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Mallory looked at her mother first. "Really?" "For 8 weeks," Ruth said. I felt the correction land. Your mother and I had not agreed. Ruth had considered, and I had converted consideration into consent because everyone was already at the table. Grant stared at his plate. "We can figure something else out." "What?" Mallory asked. "I don't know." "Exactly." Ruth folded her napkin. 8 weeks. You contribute to groceries. You clean up after yourselves. You keep the garage clear enough for both cars." "Of course," Mallory said. "And Daniel's back room is not part of the arrangement." Mallory blinked. "Why would it be?" Ruth looked at me, not her. "No reason," I said. Grant reached across the table and put his hand over Ruth's. "Thank you. Seriously. We won't make you regret it." Ruth turned her hand beneath his and squeezed once. "I believe you mean that." 3 days later, they arrived with a rented truck, 2 cars, and enough belongings to suggest they had fled a collapsing nation. By sunset, Grant's boxed air fryer was on our kitchen counter. Mallory's clothes had filled the guest closet and displaced Christmas into the hallway. I carried the last box into the garage and discovered Grant had already put his exercise bench where Ruth parked. "It's just for tonight," he said. I looked at the bench, then at Ruth's empty side of the garage. "Sure," I said, "just for tonight." The bench was still there the next morning. I found Ruth standing in the garage in her robe, holding her car keys and looking at it as if she were considering whether insurance would cover an accidental fire. "I'll move it," I said. "You said it was for one night. It was dark. The bench has handles. It's heavier than it looks. Grant carried it in by himself. I took hold of one end, then I'll wait for Grant." Ruth pressed the button to open the garage door. My car sat outside with a fine layer of dew on the windshield. "You parked in the street?" "There wasn't room." "There was room on your side. I didn't want the truck to block anybody." "The truck is gone." "It was here when I parked." She looked at me in the pale morning light. "I'm going to say something, and I want you to hear the words instead of rearranging them into nicer words. All right? Our daughter and her husband have been in this house for 14 hours. Your car is already outside, and my car is trapped behind a piece of equipment nobody in this family has used since Easter. Grant uses it." I said what I said. Grant came through the door in sweatpants, his hair flattened on one side. He stopped when he saw us holding opposite ends of his exercise bench. "Oh, sorry, I meant to get that last night." "You were tired," I said. Ruth said. "Where does it go?" Grant looked around. "I could slide it against that wall. That wall is where I keep the garden cart. I can move the garden cart." "No." He nodded once. "Okay." There was no attitude in it, which made Ruth soften despite herself. Together, he and I folded the bench and leaned it upright on my side, between a metal cabinet and the lawnmower. I could still fit my car if I angled it carefully. Ruth watched the whole operation. "It's temporary," I told her. "I know," she said. "Everything is." Our house developed new sounds, Mallory's hairdryer at 6:30. Grant opening and closing kitchen cabinets because he never remembered where the glasses were, the low murmur of their television through the guest room wall. For 38 years, Ruth and I had built habits so gradual we no longer noticed them. Mallory and Grant walked in carrying their own habits at full volume. The first week went better than Ruth expected, and worse than I admitted. Grant made coffee every morning. It was too strong, but he made it. He spent hours at the dining room table, sending applications, rewriting his resume, and calling people who began conversations with enthusiasm and ended them with promises to circle back. He wore a dress shirt for video interviews and basketball shorts below the camera. On Wednesday, I passed through the dining room and heard him say, "I believe leadership begins with accountability." He had mustard on his shorts. I pointed to it. He muted himself. "Can they see? Only if leadership stands up." He wiped at it with a napkin, which made it worse. Mallory came home that evening with Thai food and a label maker. The Thai food was welcome. The label maker was not. "What's this?" Ruth asked when she found a neat white strip reading "baking" on the cabinet where she had kept flour since the first Bush administration. "I'm making things easier," Mallory said. "For whom? For everyone. I know where I bake. I'm not saying you don't. You labeled my sugar. It looks like salt." "It does not." They're both white. One is in a sugar bowl. Mallory turned to me. "Dad, tell her it helps." I opened the refrigerator. A label reading condiments had appeared above the mustard. "I don't want to get involved," I said. Ruth gave me a look over the refrigerator door. Interesting time to develop that instinct. Mallory laughed. Ruth tried not to and failed. That was the trouble with our daughter. She could irritate you until your jaw hurt, then make one face and remind you why every room had felt brighter when she walked into it. She and Ruth spent Saturday morning in the yard planting late-season bulbs. Mallory complained about the soil, the squirrels, and the quality of the hand trowel. Ruth told her she was holding the trowel backward. Mallory said there should not be a backward way to hold a simple tool. From my work table, I could hear them laughing through the open window. Grant came into the room carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "This where you hide?" he asked. "I don't hide." He looked around. "This where you remain strategically unavailable?" "That's closer?" He handed me a mug and studied the radio on my table. I had put the casing back together, though the tuning needle still stuck below 600. "You fix those for money? No?" "Then why?" "Because they're broken." He nodded like that answer made complete sense. The back room had once been a screened porch. Before we bought the house, somebody enclosed it with thin walls and windows that leaked cold air in January. I had added shelves, replaced the floor, and installed a heavy interior door I found at a salvage store. It was too solid for the room, but I liked the way it shut. The rest of the house could be doing whatever it wanted, and in there I could hear the small click of a relay. Grant lowered himself into Ruth's chair. "I've got an interview Friday," he said, "operations director for a hotel group." "That sounds promising." "It's in Milwaukee." "That sounds far." "Mallory doesn't know yet." "Why not?" "Because she'll spend 3 days deciding she hates Milwaukee before anybody offers me the job." "You think she'd go?" "I think she'd say she would." He blew on his coffee. "Those aren't always the same thing." I turned the radio dial. Static moved through the speaker. He said, "Did Ruth want us here?" She said yes. "That's not what I asked." I set down my screwdriver. Grant watched me with an expression I recognized because I had seen it on my own face in mirrors. A man hoping the answer would change if nobody said it clearly. "She wanted to help," I said. "She also wanted an end date. So did I." "You're 1 week in. I'm aware. You're acting like you've been sentenced." He stared into the mug. "Every time I open your refrigerator, I feel like I'm stealing food. You bought groceries yesterday. Mallory bought groceries. You're married. The court considers those shared crackers." That got half a smile. I told him the room was available if he needed privacy for Friday's interview. The offer came out before I had fully considered it. Seriously? For an hour, maybe 2, an hour and a half. He stood and extended his hand. Deal. The interview lasted 2 hours and 17 minutes. I sat in the living room with my radio manual on my lap, while Ruth cleaned around me with more force than the situation required. "He's interviewing," I said. "So you've mentioned? It's a good position. In Milwaukee, you know? Mallory knows, which means everyone within 6 houses knows." From the back room came the muffled rhythm of Grant's professional voice. He sounded capable, calm, nothing like the man who had sat in the sporting goods store parking lot with his tie in his fist. Ruth moved a lamp, wiped beneath it, and put it back half an inch from where it had been. "You offered the room," she said. "For the interview. I'm not objecting. You're wiping aggressively. There was dust. There's always dust. Then I'll always have something to do." Grant emerged just before lunch, flushed and smiling. "They want a second conversation." I stood. "That's good. They asked about relocation." I said we were open. Mallory was behind him in the hallway. "We are not open." His smile disappeared. "You said you'd consider it," he said. "I said I would consider it if it was Chicago." "You said the Midwest." I was being supportive. I didn't mean every square inch of it. Ruth went to the kitchen. I should have gone with her. Instead, I stayed and helped turn their argument into a discussion, which meant translating Mallory's fear into logistics and Grant's pride into patience until neither of them had to say what they actually meant. The hotel hired someone already living in Wisconsin, Grant told us at dinner. He said it casually, then ate 2 helpings of meatloaf without tasting either one. Mallory kept saying it was for the best. Each time she said it, his fork moved a little harder against the plate. Afterward, he washed every dish in the kitchen, including clean ones from the drying rack. The weeks gathered small inconveniences the way a sweater gathers lint. Mallory's bottles filled the shower ledge. Grant left lights on. Their laundry seemed to reproduce in the hallway. They contributed to groceries, but Mallory bought brands Ruth did not use and considered the matter settled. My car stayed outside more often than it came in. I told myself it was easier. I did not tell myself for whom. One evening, Ruth came into the back room and found me reading an article on my phone while the repaired Zenith played a baseball game softly behind me. "Do you know there are 6 avocados in my refrigerator?" she asked. I did not. Mallory bought 4 yesterday. Grant bought 2 today. They like avocados. None of them are ripe. They will be. All at once, Daniel. They will become ripe at the same moment, and then this family will be placed under tremendous pressure. I laughed. She didn't. What? I asked. They're not looking at apartments. They still have the house. They're not staying there. They're trying to keep it ready for showings. There have been 2 showings. The market's slow. Grant has applied for jobs in 6 states and turned down an interview in Indianapolis because Mallory said the winters were depressing. I've heard Indianapolis has difficult summers, too. Ruth sat in her chair. Tomorrow is 6 weeks. I know. Do you? Of course. What happens at 8? I lowered the radio. We talk. That means nothing. It means we see where things stand. I know where their things stand. Most of them stand in my hallway. They've had bad luck. Grant lost one job because he lost his temper. He lost another possibility because Mallory didn't like Milwaukee. That's not weather, Daniel. Those are decisions. She's scared. So am I. That surprised me. Ruth was rarely afraid of anything she could name. Of what? She looked toward the closed door, though nobody was near it. That we're going to get used to this. At 7 weeks and 5 days, Grant received a rejection from a regional restaurant company after 4 interviews. On the same afternoon, the couple interested in their house withdrew their offer after an inspection, found water damage near the basement window. Mallory came home with mascara smudged beneath one eye and sat at our kitchen table without taking off her coat. Grant stood behind her with his hands in his pockets. "We need another month," she said. Ruth looked at me. I knew what she wanted. She wanted me to wait. She wanted me to let the silence remain uncomfortable until Mallory and Grant carried some of it. Instead, I pulled out the chair beside our daughter. "We'll figure it out," I said. Ruth did not look away from me. Mallory reached for my hand. Hers was cold. "Thank you." "We haven't discussed how long," Ruth said. "I said a month," Mallory replied. "You said you need a month. Your father said we'll figure it out." Those are both foggy sentences. Grant pulled out a chair but didn't sit. 30 days, Ruth nodded. 30 days. The house gets repaired and relisted. You keep applying for work, and we have a conversation at the end that doesn't begin after somebody receives bad news. "Fair," Grant said. Mallory squeezed my hand. "Completely fair." I mistook the relief in the room for agreement. Later, in our bedroom, Ruth folded her sweater and placed it over the back of a chair. She folded it again, even though the first fold had been fine. "I should have waited," I said. "Yes." They were sitting there devastated. "Yes." It wasn't the right moment to force an answer. There will never be a moment you consider right. That's not fair. She turned. "You heard our daughter ask to stay. You heard me say nothing. You looked directly at me, understood what I needed, and answered anyway. I said we'd figure it out. You decided the outcome and left the details for me. I didn't decide anything. You decided they're staying. For 30 days. Because I gave your decision a number. I sat on the edge of the bed. The guest room television came through the wall as a low, cheerful murmur. Somebody on a game show applauded. "What did you want me to say?" I asked. "I wanted you to say, 'Ruth and I need to talk.' They would have known you didn't want them here. I don't want them here." The plainness of it startled me. Ruth rubbed her forehead. "I love Mallory. I care about Grant. I don't want to share a bathroom with either one of them. Those things can all be true. They're family. I'm your family too. I know that. You know it like you know where the fire extinguisher is. I'm asking you to act like the kitchen is burning." I glanced toward the wall. "They can hear you." "Good." She turned down the quilt with a hard snap. "That right there." "What?" "You're more worried about them hearing the truth than me living with it." She got into bed and opened her book. She had been on the same page for 3 nights. The next morning, Mallory had arranged 4 ripe avocados in a bowl with a handwritten note that said, "Emergency guacamole." Ruth read it, sighed, and made toast for everyone. That was how we continued. Not through resolution, through breakfast. The water damage at Mallory and Grant's house was worse than the inspector had suggested and better than Mallory described. Water had entered around a basement window, soaked part of the wall, and stained the carpet. It did not require a disaster crew, but it did require removal, drying, sealing, repainting, and someone willing to spend 2 Saturdays crouched beneath a window. I had all the tools. Ruth stood in the garage while I loaded them into Grant's car. "You don't have to fix this," she said. "I know. Do you? Contractors are expensive." So is resentment. I'll be gone 6 hours. That isn't what I mean. Grant came out carrying a roll of plastic sheeting. I can do it myself if this is causing trouble. It isn't, I said. Ruth said, it is. He stopped between us. I looked at her. What do you want me to do? Stand here with the tools while he pays somebody? I want you to notice that you offer your back every time somebody else faces a bill. Grant lowered the plastic. I'm standing right here. I know, Ruth said. That's why I'm not pretending. His face reddened, but he nodded. Okay. He put the plastic in the car and waited. I expected Ruth to go inside. Instead, she stepped closer to him. I'm not angry that you need help, she said. I'm angry that Daniel treats helping like a reflex and leaves me to decide when it stops. Grant glanced at me, then back at her. That sounds like a conversation I shouldn't be in. It became your conversation when you moved your weight bench into my parking space. I moved it to Daniel's side. He looked at the folded bench beside my lawnmower. I'm beginning to understand this isn't about fitness equipment. That gives you an advantage over my husband. On the drive, Grant kept his eyes on the road. After 10 minutes, he said, She's scary. She likes clarity. Is that what we're calling it? She's usually right. She thinks you shouldn't help me. No, she thinks I don't know why I'm helping you. Do you? I looked out at a line of bare trees beyond the highway. You want instructions on sealing a window, or do you want to spend the day discussing my marriage? Window. Good choice. Their house felt abandoned even though it had been empty less than 2 months. The rooms echoed. Rectangles of cleaner paint showed where pictures had hung. In the kitchen, one paper plate and a plastic fork sat beside the sink. Mallory had left a jar of turmeric in a cabinet, and its loneliness seemed excessive. Grant pulled up the carpet while I removed the damaged section of wall. He worked harder than he needed to, as if effort could be stored against future accusations. Around noon, he sat on the basement steps and drank water. Curtis called, he said. What did he want? For me to come back. That's good. No, it isn't. You need a job. I need a spine. They're not mutually exclusive. He didn't apologize. He said things had gotten out of hand and we both said stuff. What did you say? I told him to hire another parasite. I set down the utility knife. You understand that insults don't improve when repeated. I felt good for 3 seconds. And now I live in your floral guest room. I sat beside him. Grant rolled the bottle between his palms. Mallory wanted me to go back. That doesn't surprise me. She says we need stability. That doesn't surprise me either. She used to hate Curtis. Curtis wasn't paying your mortgage then. He looked at me. Do you think I'm an idiot? Sometimes. Appreciate the consistency. I think you spent years believing promises because believing them allowed you to avoid a difficult decision. That's not the same as being an idiot. It has similar monthly payments. He smiled, then leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. I don't want to be the man living with his wife's parents, he said. Then don't make it who you are. Easy for you to say. No, it's easy for me to say because I'm not the one who has to do it. That answer seemed to satisfy him more than encouragement would have. We finished the wall by late afternoon. Grant sealed the window himself while I watched, and when he spread too much compound along one edge, I let him notice it before I spoke. At home, Mallory met us in the driveway with sandwiches wrapped in foil. She kissed Grant, thanked me, and handed Ruth a bundle of cut hydrangeas she had found at the grocery store. I know these aren't enough, she said. Enough for what? Ruth asked. For the noise, and the bathroom, and Dad's car being outside. Ruth looked at me. I became interested in unloading the drill, Mallory continued. I do see it, Mom. I'm glad. I'm not trying to take over your house. I know. The labels were supposed to be helpful. They weren't. I know that now. Ruth accepted the flowers. They're beautiful. For several days, the house changed. Mallory removed the labels. Grant took the weight bench apart and stored it at their empty house. I parked in the garage. They cooked dinner on Thursday and cleaned everything afterward. On Friday, Mallory brought Ruth coffee without asking how she took it because she already knew. Ruth relaxed just enough for the rest of us to relax too. Then Mallory began leaving mail on the kitchen island. It started with a utility bill, then a package, then job applications she had printed for Grant, even though Grant preferred applying online. A stack formed beside the fruit bowl. Ruth moved it to the end of the counter. Mallory moved it back. Why does it need to be here? Ruth asked. So we see it. I see it wherever it is. Grant forgets. Grant, sitting at the table, looked up from his laptop. I'm in the room. I know, honey. Do you? Mallory frowned. What is that supposed to mean? It means I can manage my own applications. I printed 3 good ones. One requires a license I don't have. So get the license. It takes 6 months. You didn't read it? I read it. Did you? Her mouth tightened. I stepped in before either of them could say the next thing. Maybe keep the applications in a folder. Ruth opened a cabinet and took out a serving platter. A folder. Remarkable. Marriage saved. Nobody laughed. Grant got a temporary job counting inventory overnight for a company that sent teams into pharmacies and department stores. The pay was low, the hours were strange, and Mallory spoke about it as if he had joined a traveling circus. It's work, he said. You should be spending that time applying for something real. I apply during the day. You sleep during the day. Sometimes people who work at night do that. She looked at me. Dad? I knew what she wanted me to say. I knew what Grant wanted me to say. I also knew Ruth was listening from the sink. It's work, I said. Grant nodded. Mallory pushed her chair back. Great. The men have voted. Ruth turned off the water. Don't put me on a team because you don't like the score. Mallory stood there for a moment, wounded and angry. Then she took her plate to the counter, rinsed it, and went upstairs without slamming a door. She gets that from you, Grant told me. What? The silent exit that makes everybody feel worse. I don't do that. 3 people looked at me. All right, I said, occasionally. Their repaired house received another offer in the middle of the 3rd month. It was lower than they had hoped, but after 2 nights of arguments and calculations, they accepted it. Ruth began watching the calendar. The closing was scheduled for a Friday. On Thursday evening, Mallory brought home sparkling cider. Grant opened it at dinner, and the cork struck the ceiling hard enough to leave a small mark. We're officially homeless tomorrow, Mallory said, raising her glass. Temporarily, I added. Ruth did not raise hers. The sale would clear the mortgage and most of the loan tied to the house, with enough left for a deposit when they were ready to move. It was not a windfall. It was breathing room. We should keep the money untouched until Grant has something permanent, Mallory said. That's smart, I replied. Ruth set down her glass. Where will you live in the meantime? The question cooled the table. Mallory glanced at Grant. Grant glanced at me. We were hoping to stay through the holidays, he said. It was nearly 3 months away. Ruth's expression did not change. That wasn't the agreement. We know, Mallory said quickly. But moving into an apartment now would eat through the money, and then if Grant gets something in another state, we'd have to break a lease. There are month-to-month rentals, Ruth said. They're expensive, I said. Ruth turned toward me slowly. I had done it again. Mallory leaned forward. We won't be in the way. Grant is working nights. I'm gone all day. We can pay more for groceries. Ruth looked from our daughter to Grant and finally to me. You have until the first Sunday in December, she said. Not Christmas, not New Year's. That Sunday. Mallory came around the table and hugged her. Ruth did not push her away. She even rested one hand against Mallory's back. But over our daughter's shoulder, she looked directly at me. I knew the date she had given them. I also knew she no longer believed it. The next morning, Ruth wrote move-out day on the kitchen calendar in blue ink. Mallory came downstairs, saw it, and opened the refrigerator without comment. Grant arrived 10 minutes later from an overnight inventory job, read the calendar, and poured orange juice into a coffee mug. You okay? I asked. I counted 9,000 bottles of shampoo in a store where every song sounded like it had been written by a committee. I meant the calendar, I know. He drank the juice and went upstairs. Mallory closed the refrigerator. Was the all caps necessary? I print in capital letters, Ruth said. You wrote dentist in lowercase. The dentist doesn't live here. I carried my coffee to the back room. That became my answer more often as the weather cooled. When Mallory and Ruth disagreed over where to store the extra towels, I checked the radio. When Grant and Mallory argued about his overnight schedule, I found something in the garage that needed sorting. I told myself I was giving people space. The problem with giving people space is that sometimes you take all of it for yourself. Grant's inventory work lasted 5 weeks. He came home at odd hours smelling like dust and fluorescent lighting. On good nights, he joked about the things people apparently stole from pharmacies. On bad nights, he ate standing over the sink and went upstairs without speaking. He kept applying elsewhere. The dining table disappeared beneath lists of openings, printed resumes, and yellow pads covered in notes. Ruth gathered the papers into a neat stack every evening. Grant spread them out again every morning. One afternoon, he knocked on the back room door while I was adjusting the latch. "Can I borrow this for an interview?" "When?" 10 tomorrow. "How long?" 45 minutes. An hour if I'm fascinating. "Who's it with?" "A medical supply company. Regional sales." "You've never sold medical supplies. I've convinced restaurant owners to pay $14 for soup. I can sell anything." "You didn't convince Curtis to give you ownership." He pointed at me. "That energy stays outside during the interview." The next morning, I moved my chair away from the desk and carried the radio parts into the garage so he would not knock anything over. Grant wore a gray suit and set his laptop at my work table. Before he closed the door, he looked around. "This is a good room. It's an old porch. It's quiet. That's why it's good." His interview lasted 73 minutes. When he came out, he was smiling, but the company wanted him traveling 4 nights a week. Mallory rejected the idea before he finished explaining it. "You'd never be home. I'm currently home too much. That isn't funny. I thought it had structure." She looked toward the back room. "Did they say what it pays?" "Not yet." "Then why are we arguing about it?" "You started arguing. I asked a question. You made a declaration with a question mark on it." I was at the sink rinsing my coffee cup. Ruth sat at the table with her arms crossed. I said, "Travel might be hard at first." Grant looked at me. "For who?" "For both of you," Mallory said. "Thank you." Ruth's chair scraped back. "What?" I asked. "Nothing." She went upstairs. Mallory watched her go. "Is she mad at us?" "No," I said. Grant closed his laptop. "I don't think that was nothing." I found Ruth in our bedroom changing the pillowcases. She stripped mine with quick, efficient jerks. "You want help? I want you to stop doing that. Changing pillowcases, taking Mallory's side every time you're afraid she'll be upset." I didn't take her side. "You told Grant the travel would be hard. It would. He knows that. Mallory knows that. Nobody needs you to explain that marriage involves seeing each other." What was I supposed to say? You could have said nothing. I say nothing all the time. You don't like that either. She pulled a clean pillowcase over my pillow. You don't say nothing. You wait until you know which sentence will make the room quiet. That's not true. It is the truest thing I know about you. I sat on the bed. Ruth tossed the other clean case beside me. "And then you come back here looking wounded because peace didn't last." "I'm trying to help. I know. That's what makes it exhausting." At Thanksgiving, Mallory decided Ruth should not have to cook. She announced this as a gift, then replaced Ruth's menu, moved the roasting pan, and invited my brother Peter and his wife, Linda, an hour earlier than usual. "I'm giving you the day off," she told Ruth. "I didn't request the day off. You always complain that nobody helps. I complain that everybody arrives when the food is ready." Exactly. Those are not the same complaint. Mallory had ordered a turkey from an upscale market. It arrived partially cooked with a sheet of instructions long enough to qualify as a lease. Grant read them aloud while Mallory rearranged dishes in the oven, and Ruth stood at the counter slicing celery with the expression of a woman performing surgery during an air raid. I made the mistake of asking whether anyone needed me. "Set the table," 3 women said at once. Peter arrived carrying 2 bottles of wine and a pie from a gas station. Linda followed with a glass bowl of cranberry salad that nobody liked, but everybody praised because it had been present at every family Thanksgiving since 1998. Peter looked around the crowded kitchen. "You folks running a hotel?" "An asylum," Ruth said. Mallory laughed too loudly. Grant came in from the garage holding the turkey instructions. "Daniel, I need your opinion." "That's your first mistake," Ruth said. The turkey was still pink near the thigh. Mallory blamed the instructions. Grant blamed the oven temperature. Ruth did not blame anyone. She simply took over. Within 20 minutes, she had separated the legs, covered the breast, raised the heat, and restored order without appearing to hurry. Mallory hovered beside her, offering suggestions that Ruth ignored. I went to the back room and turned on the football game. Peter found me there before halftime. "Smart man," he said. "I'm staying out of the way." That's what I said. He sat in Ruth's chair and loosened his belt before we had eaten. Peter was 3 years younger than me and had spent most of those years believing his appetite was a personality. "How long are the refugees staying?" he asked. "First Sunday in December. That's specific. Ruth likes dates. Linda likes threats. Maybe they should start a club. I turned the volume up. Peter looked through the open doorway. You're a good dad, letting them land here. They needed help. Makes sense. Family's family. He said it casually. Peter had never let anyone stay in his house longer than a weekend, including our mother after her furnace failed. From the kitchen came the clatter of a dropped utensil, followed by Mallory saying, "I had it, Mom." Peter leaned back. "Still, it's nice having everybody together." I looked at him. "You have a guest room." He sat forward. "Our water pressure is terrible. Dinner was 40 minutes late and excellent." Mallory made a toast, thanking Ruth for allowing her to help, which Ruth accepted with a face so controlled it almost looked peaceful. After dessert, Linda asked Mallory whether she and Grant had found an apartment. "We're waiting until his work situation is settled," Mallory said. "Very practical," Peter said. Ruth put down her fork. Grant noticed. "We're still planning around the date." Mallory glanced at him. Obviously, nobody asked which date. The blue letters on the kitchen calendar had become a fifth person at the table. That night, after everyone left, I found Ruth scraping plates into the trash. Mallory was sealing leftovers into containers. They worked side by side without speaking. "I'm going to bed," Mallory said finally. Ruth nodded. Mallory hesitated. "Thank you for saving the turkey. It wasn't in danger. It was raw. It was undercooked." "That sounds like danger." Ruth smiled despite herself. Mallory kissed her cheek and went upstairs. I began loading the dishwasher. Ruth said, "She's waiting for you to change the date. She said they're planning around it." Grant said that. Same household, not the same person. I placed a plate in the rack. "You think Mallory's lying?" "I think Mallory believes a deadline is the opening offer in a negotiation." I shut the dishwasher. Ruth wiped the counter where Mallory's containers had been. "Do you know what she said to me while you were watching football?" "What?" "She said she didn't understand how I lived with a man who vanished every time the room became uncomfortable." I felt my face warm. "What did you say?" "I told her she was not wrong. Nice. I also told her she doesn't get to use my marriage to distract from her own. You didn't mention that part first." "I'm mentioning it now." I started toward the hallway. "There," she said. "What?" "You're leaving." I said I was going to bed. "No," Mallory said she was going to bed. "You said nothing. You're just moving away because you don't like what I said. I don't want to fight in the kitchen. You don't want to fight anywhere." I stopped. Ruth leaned against the counter. She looked tired, not angry. Somehow that was worse. "I miss you," she said. "I'm right here." "No, you're in that room. That room is 10 steps away. It might as well be another house." I did not know how to answer without defending myself, and I knew defense was the wrong answer. So I stood there too long. Ruth folded the dish towel. "Go to bed, Daniel." The first Sunday in December arrived with freezing rain. Mallory had not packed a single box. Grant's overnight job had ended when the company's seasonal contract did. He had 2 promising interviews, one with a software company that sold scheduling systems to restaurants. The position was remote. The final interview was Monday morning. At breakfast, Grant's eyes moved between the kitchen calendar and his coffee. "I can get a hotel for a few days," he said. Mallory stared at him. "Why would we waste money on a hotel?" "Because today's the date. Mom isn't throwing us into freezing rain the day before your interview." Ruth buttered a piece of toast. "You've known the date for 3 months. The weather did not sneak up and unpack your boxes." Mallory's face hardened. "Can we please be reasonable?" "I have been reasonable. Grant could get this job tomorrow, and if he doesn't, then we make a new plan." "That was supposed to be the plan 3 months ago," Grant said quietly. "Mallory, no. I'm tired of being treated like we're taking advantage. We buy food. We cook. I have helped with everything in this house." Ruth placed the knife beside her plate. I saw the conversation tipping. I saw Mallory's fear, Grant's shame, and Ruth's patience reaching its end. I also saw the ice on the window. "1 week," I said. Nobody spoke. "Grant has the interview tomorrow. Give them 1 week to arrange something." Ruth turned to me. Mallory exhaled. "Thank you." Ruth stood and carried her plate to the sink. I followed her into the hallway. "It's 7 days," I whispered. "No," she said. "It's the same day over and over. He may get the job." "I hope he does." "Then what's the problem?" Ruth looked past me toward the kitchen, where Mallory was already wiping move-out day from the calendar with a damp thumb. "The problem," she said, "is that you keep teaching them. I don't mean what I say." Mallory's thumb left a blue smear where the date had been. Ruth watched her do it. Then she walked upstairs without saying another word. Grant's interview began at 9 the next morning. He asked to use the back room, and I said yes. He carried in his laptop, a legal pad, and a small lamp Mallory had bought because the lighting in there made him look gray and defeated. "I am gray and defeated," he said. "You don't have to photograph that way," she replied. She moved Ruth's chair out of view, adjusted the lamp, and frowned at the shelves behind him. "Can we take some of this down?" "No," I said. "It's visually busy. It's a shelf. There are old radios everywhere. You're in a room where I repair old radios." Grant sat at the work table and opened his laptop. "The radios make me look interesting." "They make you look 70, Mallory said. "Experienced? Don't make jokes during the interview. I know how to interview. You've had 12. Grant looked at her. Mallory touched his shoulder. "That came out wrong." "Did it?" I picked up my coffee and left before I could improve anything. The interview went well. Then there was an online assessment, a second interview with somebody in Denver, and a request for references. Each new step sounded like progress without producing a decision. The extra week ended on a Sunday. Grant had heard nothing. Ruth did not mention the deadline. She moved through the house with a quiet efficiency that made every cabinet door sound final. Mallory interpreted the silence as surrender. I knew better, but knowing better did not make me behave better. "They're close," I told Ruth that night. She was sitting in bed with a paperback open against her knees. "To what?" "The job." "Are you hiring him?" "No." "Then you don't know." "The reference check is a good sign." So was Milwaukee. He's done everything they asked. I'm not talking about Grant. I changed into my pajamas and folded my clothes over the chair. Ruth turned a page. "What do you want me to do now?" I asked. "I wanted you to do something last Sunday. I can't go back." "No." "So, tell me what you want now." "I want to stop being the only person in this house who knows your word doesn't mean anything. That's not fair. You keep saying that as if fairness is a door you can close. I gave them 7 days because of the interview. And the 7 days passed. I know. Do you? There it was again. 2 words that made me feel 12 years old and dishonest, even when I had not technically lied. I got into bed. Ruth switched off her lamp. In the dark, I said, "I'll talk to them tomorrow." She lay still beside me. "What will you say?" "That they need a plan." "They have a plan. They're waiting for Grant's job and living here. A plan to leave. Those are your words, Daniel. Put actual words in their mouths." I did talk to them the next morning. I found Grant at the dining table and Mallory packing leftovers into a plastic container. "You two need to decide where you're going," I said. Mallory pressed the lid down. "We know. The week is over. We know that too." So we're waiting for a decision that could come any day. And after that, we get a place." "How soon?" She looked at Grant. He said, 2 weeks after the offer." Mallory frowned. "We don't know that. We can find something in 2 weeks, not something decent." I didn't say decent. She put the container in her work bag. "Why would we rush into a bad apartment after being patient this long?" Grant leaned back. "Because we told them we'd leave. We've told them lots of things based on circumstances that changed." I heard Ruth moving dishes in the kitchen. She was close enough to hear every word. 2 weeks after an offer," I said. "That's the limit." Mallory's eyes narrowed. "Did Mom send you?" "No." "Because if she has a problem, she can talk to me." "She has talked to you, not about this. The date on the calendar was about this." She picked up her bag. "I have to go." "Mallory, I heard you. 2 weeks after an offer we don't have." She kissed my cheek as she passed. The gesture was so automatic it hurt more than anger would have. Grant waited until the front door closed. "I can get us out sooner," he said quietly. "How?" "Short-term rental. Hotel. One of those furnished places." "You have the money?" "We have enough." "Mallory know?" "She knows what's in the account." "That's not what I asked." He rubbed both hands over his face. "She thinks leaving before I get the job means admitting your mom was right." "About what?" "That we took advantage." "Did you?" He looked toward the kitchen. "Yes," Ruth said from the doorway. Grant lowered his hands. Ruth held a dish towel over one shoulder. "You don't have to ask the room when I'm standing in it. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing for being uncomfortable. Do something. He nodded. Ruth's expression softened a little. Grant, I don't want you humiliated. I want my house back. I understand. Do you? Yes. He said it without defensiveness, and I believed him. That evening he showed Mallory 3 furnished apartments. Their argument began upstairs, moved down the hallway, and ended in the driveway, where Mallory sat in her car for 20 minutes without leaving. Grant came into the back room afterward and closed the door behind him. She says, I'm choosing your mother over her. You're choosing an apartment. Apparently it has political significance. I set down the tuning tool. He dropped into Ruth's chair. I should have taken the Indianapolis interview. Probably, I should have taken Curtis's offer. Maybe. He looked surprised. You told me I needed a spine. A spine doesn't mean rejecting every option that bruises your pride. Where was this wisdom when I had options? You didn't ask. I ask you things constantly. You ask me to agree with what you've already decided. He considered that. Is that what Mallory does? He asked. Sometimes. Is that what you do? According to Ruth, I don't decide enough to qualify. He smiled, but only for a second. Another 2 weeks passed. Grant began using a rented desk at a shared workspace for interviews because I told him I needed the room. He accepted this without complaint. Mallory did not. It's $40 a day, she said. Then he should do interviews at the library. They don't have private rooms available when he needs them. The dining table worked before. You and Mom walk through every 10 minutes. We live here. She looked toward the back room door. You don't use that room all day. No, so he could use it when you're not. He can ask. Why should he have to ask every time? Because it's my room. Her face changed at the word my. She said, This is Mom's house too. I'm aware. You act like every decision has to go through you. I almost laughed. Ruth had spent months accusing me of the opposite. Grant can use the room when he asks, and I don't need it. That's ridiculous. It's ordinary. It's territorial. Mallory, I'm allowed to have one room in my house that doesn't become part of your emergency. She stared at me long enough for me to hear the static between stations on the radio behind me. Then she said, You always make helping feel like a favor. It is a favor. She left before I could soften it. I nearly followed her. The old impulse rose immediately. Explain, translate, remove the sharp edge so she would not have to carry it. Instead, I closed the door. Grant's offer arrived on a Thursday afternoon. He came into the house shouting Mallory's name. Ruth and I were in the kitchen. Mallory ran downstairs, and Grant caught her around the waist hard enough to lift her off the floor. I got it, he said into her hair. She laughed and cried at the same time. Ruth hugged him. I shook his hand, then hugged him too, because the handshake felt stupid after 7 months under one roof. The position paid less than the hotel job would have, but more than his old salary at the restaurant. He would sell scheduling software to independent restaurants from home, with occasional travel for training. He started Monday. Mallory opened a bottle of wine. Grant cooked steaks. Ruth made potatoes. For one evening, the house felt generous again. To 2 weeks, Grant said, raising his glass. Mallory glanced at him. We'll start looking tomorrow. Ruth looked at me. I nodded. They did look. The first apartment was too small. The second smelled like cigarettes. The third required a longer lease than Mallory wanted. Grant suggested taking it anyway. Mallory said they should not make a desperate decision 4 days after finally receiving good news. Meanwhile, he needed somewhere to work. The dining room is fine temporarily, he told me on Friday. Mallory said, You'll be on calls all day. I have headphones. Dad walks through to the kitchen. I've seen him walk. It's not that distracting. You need a door. He looked toward the back of the house, then at me. I can keep renting the desk. Not while we're trying to save for a deposit, Mallory said. I said, The room isn't available as a full-time office. Grant nodded. I know. Mallory did not argue. That should have worried me more than it did. On Saturday morning, my sister-in-law, Linda, called about a leak beneath her kitchen sink. Peter had tightened something, which generally meant it now required tools and an apology. I loaded my toolbox. Ruth stood at the front door. How long? Couple hours. Peter can call a plumber. I know. She gave me a tired look. I'll be back before lunch, I said. Linda's leak took 4 hours because Peter had cracked the slip nut and then wrapped it in enough tape to restrain a hostage. When I got home, my records were in grocery boxes in the hallway. Mallory stood in the doorway of the back room. Grant stood behind her, worrying a loose thread on his sleeve. My work table was bare except for a cereal bowl holding the screws from the radio I had disassembled that morning. "Put those back," I said. "Grant starts Monday," Mallory replied. "He needs a door he can close. He said he'd use the dining room. Because he didn't want to fight with you. I wasn't fighting. You make people ask permission to exist in this house. Put my things back." She planted both hands on her hips. "Why? So you can sit in here and avoid everyone? This room isn't available. Then give him your room or leave. Mom and I are tired of you acting like this whole house belongs to you." Upstairs, a drawer slammed, then another. The zipper on our large blue suitcase rasped around one corner, stopped, and continued. Relief crossed Mallory's face. She turned toward the stairs. "Mom? I'm sorry you got dragged into this." Ruth appeared at the top of the staircase carrying the blue suitcase in one hand and a duffel bag in the other. She came down slowly. Mallory stepped aside to let her pass toward me. Ruth set the suitcase at Grant's feet. "Those are yours," she said. The relief left Mallory's face. Ruth placed the duffel beside it. "Yours are upstairs. I'm still packing them. Mom, you told my husband to leave his home. I said if he wouldn't share a room nobody uses." Ruth looked at the grocery boxes, the exposed records, the cereal bowl of screws. "You will both be gone before dinner." Grant closed his eyes. Mallory stared at her mother. "You complained about him too." "Yes. You said he disappears. You said he never backs you up." "I said those things to my husband. You overheard one conversation and turned it into permission. I was defending you. No. You were counting on me to choose you." Mallory's mouth opened, but no sound came. Ruth pointed upstairs. "Pack." For once I did not translate. I did not soften Ruth's words, offer an extra night, mention the weather, or ask everyone to sit down. Grant picked up the blue suitcase. Mallory looked at me as if waiting for the father she knew to return. I bent down, lifted my copy of Kind of Blue from the grocery box, and carried it back into my room. Mallory waited for me to say something. I slid the record onto the shelf, checked the spine for damage, and reached for the next one. Dad. The grocery boxes filled most of the hallway. One of my notebooks lay open on top, its pages bent beneath a stack of old radio manuals. "Dad, look at me." I did. Her anger had cracked. Underneath it was disbelief, almost panic. She had seen her mother angry before. She had seen me disappointed. She had never seen both of us stop making the situation easier for her at the same time. "You're really letting her do this?" she asked. "Your mother isn't doing this alone. So, you agree with her?" "Yes." "You want us gone today." "I wanted you gone weeks ago. I just didn't say it clearly enough." The words sounded harsher once they were in the room. My instinct was to add something. "Not forever. We still love you." "Nobody wants this." Ruth came down with 2 more bags. Mallory laughed once without humor. "Wow." Grant took the bags from Ruth. "I'll load the car." "No," Mallory said. "We're not leaving like this." Grant looked at her. "How would you like to leave? I'd like everyone to calm down." Ruth put one hand on the banister. "I am calm. That makes it worse. I'm not trying to make it pleasant. This is insane. We've lived here 7 months. Grant finally gets a job, and now you throw us out? You were supposed to leave before he got the job. We were waiting for stability. You sold your house. You have money in the bank. Grant told us you could afford a furnished rental." Mallory turned on him. "You told them?" I answered a question. "That was private. So is Daniel's room," Ruth said. Mallory's face tightened. "Stop making this about a room. You made it about the room when you emptied it. It was the only practical option." Grant picked up the blue suitcase and the duffel bag. "I'm getting a hotel," he said. Mallory stared at him. "You're siding with them?" "No, I'm getting a hotel because your mother told us to leave her house. My mother is angry. She's been angry since Thanksgiving." Then she should have said something. Ruth's mouth opened. I said she did. Everybody looked at me. "She said it over and over," I continued. I kept turning it into more time. Mallory shook her head. "So, this is my fault because you can't communicate?" "No. This is my fault because I didn't communicate. What you said today is yours. You're unbelievable. I've been very predictable." That's part of the problem. She went upstairs hard enough to make the framed photographs on the wall tremble. Grant remained in the hallway, still holding the luggage. He looked toward the open back room door. "I didn't ask her to do this," he said. I know. I told her I'd use the dining table. I know that too. His eyes moved to the cereal bowl. I should have stopped her. Yes. He nodded. There was nothing else to give him. No sentence that would let him keep both his innocence and the benefit. He carried the bags outside. Packing took 2 hours. It should have taken longer, considering how much of the house they had occupied, but anger makes people efficient. Ruth emptied the guest room dresser. Mallory took clothes from the closet without folding them. Grant carried boxes to both cars. I put my records back, one at a time, because I did not trust myself upstairs. At one point, I found Grant kneeling beside the hallway box, gathering the small screws from the cereal bowl. 2 had spilled onto the carpet. Did you find them all? I asked. I think so. There should be 12, he counted. 11. We searched on our hands and knees until I saw the last one caught near the baseboard. Grant picked it up and placed it in my palm. I'm sorry, Daniel. It would have been easy to tell him not to worry about it. A screw was nothing. I had dozens like it. Instead, I closed my fingers around it. Thank you. Mallory came down wearing her coat and carrying an armful of hangers with dresses still on them. Are you ready? She asked him. Almost. Put those in my car. He took the dresses. She looked into the back room. You got what you wanted? I was standing in the doorway with a stack of records against my chest. No, I said. I wanted you to respect a no. You never say no. I did today. After letting us think we were safe here. You were safe. You weren't in charge. Ruth came out of the guest room carrying Mallory's makeup bag. Mallory took it from her. I hope this was worth it. Ruth's face changed then. Not much. A small flinch near one eye. You told him to leave, she said. You keep saying that like I meant the whole house. You said the words, or leave. I meant the room, the argument. I meant he could stop acting like a king and go somewhere else if he needed privacy so badly. Go where? Mallory spread her hands. I don't know. His brother's. A hotel. He walks out whenever things are uncomfortable anyway. Ruth became very still. That is enough, she said. Mallory looked at me, but I had no rescue to offer. She went outside. Grant made one final trip through the house. He unplugged his charger from the dining room wall, picked up a pair of shoes beside the stairs, and took the job offer packet from the kitchen counter. At the front door, he paused. I'll return the blue suitcase. Keep it until you're settled, Ruth said. He gave a tired, crooked smile. Might be a while. Ruth did not answer. The 2 cars backed out one after the other. Grant went first. Mallory sat in our driveway for nearly a minute before following him. The house was quiet before her taillights disappeared. I closed the front door. Ruth locked it. You think she has a key? She asked. She does. Ruth held out her hand. I had given Mallory a spare years before. I did not know where it was now. I'll ask for it, and I said, no, not tonight. She sat on the bottom stair. I remained by the door. For several minutes, neither of us moved. We had imagined getting our house back as relief. Instead, the quiet felt like the second after glass breaks, when you are still waiting to see how badly someone is cut. I'm sorry, I said. Ruth rubbed both hands over her face. I should have backed you up sooner. Yes, I should have stopped this months ago. Yes, I'm trying here, I know. She looked up at me. Her eyes were wet, which frightened me more than the packing had. I don't feel good about this, Daniel. Neither do I. I wanted them to leave. I didn't want our daughter to hate me. She doesn't hate you. Don't. What? Don't fix the sentence because it scares you. I sat beside her. After a while, Ruth leaned her shoulder against mine. We stayed that way until the furnace came on and warmed the hallway. We ate leftovers for dinner. Neither of us had the energy to cook. Grant texted at 7:30 to say they had found adjoining rooms at a hotel near the highway. Adjoining rooms seemed like a detail with a story inside it, but I did not ask. Tell Mallory we love her, I typed. I erased it. Thanks for letting us know, I sent instead. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, and did not return. Upstairs, the guest bedroom looked larger than I remembered. The mattress was bare. A pale rectangle on the wall showed where Mallory had leaned a framed print without hanging it. In the closet, the Christmas decorations were stacked crookedly. One of Grant's dress socks lay behind the hamper. I picked it up and carried it to our room. A small brown overnight bag sat on the chair beside Ruth's dresser. You missed one, I said. Ruth was removing her earrings. She saw the bag and looked away. That isn't theirs. Are we going somewhere? No. I put Grant's sock on the dresser. Whose is it? Mine. The answer stayed between us. Ruth sat at the foot of the bed. I packed it before you came home. Why? I heard Mallory moving your things. I told her to stop. She said Grant needed the room and you would give in once you understood. You knew I wouldn't. No, Daniel. I didn't. The words landed more quietly than Mallory's ultimatum and did more damage. Ruth folded her hands. I packed their things first. Then I packed enough for myself to stay with my sister for a few nights. You were going to leave? If you let our daughter push you out of your own room after everything I said, yes, I wouldn't have. I wanted to believe that. I sat in the chair beside the bag. She continued. I wasn't leaving our marriage. I was leaving the house before I said something I couldn't take back. Like what? That being married to a good man can still be lonely. I looked at the carpet. Ruth took a breath. You are kind, Daniel. You are dependable. You would drive across town in the rain for anybody we know. But sometimes you give so much to whoever is in trouble that the person standing beside you disappears. You didn't disappear. I did to you. My first impulse was to tell her she was wrong. I had noticed every sigh, every calendar mark, every look across the dinner table. Noticing had cost me nothing. I'm sorry, I said. She nodded, but she did not tell me it was all right. The phone rang at 9. Peter's name appeared on the screen. That was fast, Ruth said. I answered in the hallway. Peter did not bother with hello. What the hell happened over there? Mallory called you? She's crying so hard Linda can barely understand her. Where is she? The hotel. She says you threw them out because Grant needed an office. That's not what happened. She said you told her she was taking over the house. She emptied my room and told me to leave. Peter was quiet for half a second. She was upset. So were we. Come on, Dan. Family says things. That doesn't make the things disappear. She's your daughter, I'm aware. She and Grant have nowhere to go. They're in a hotel and they can afford an apartment. A hotel isn't a home. Neither is somebody else's back room. Peter sighed into the phone. You're really going to dig in over this? I looked toward our bedroom. Ruth stood just inside the doorway, listening. I almost said the words I had used all my life. Things got heated. We'll work it out. It's a misunderstanding. Instead, I said, Mallory ordered me out of my own home because I wouldn't give her husband my room. Ruth asked them to leave. I agreed. That's what happened. Peter made an uncomfortable sound. Well, I wasn't there. No, you weren't. I'm just saying somebody has to be the bigger person. Why? The question surprised both of us. Peter said he would call later. Ruth waited until I ended the call. You told him, she said. I told him. She nodded once and went back into the bedroom. I walked to the kitchen. 4 ripe avocados sat in the fruit bowl, soft enough to bruise under a thumb. I took out a knife, cut into the first one, and found it brown all the way through. The second avocado was brown too. Ruth came into the kitchen while I was cutting the third. What are you doing? Finding one worth saving. It's after 10. I'm aware. You don't even like avocados. That isn't the point. She leaned against the counter and watched me open the third one. Green near the skin, gray at the center. Bad? She asked. Complicated. That one can go in therapy. I laughed harder than the joke deserved. Ruth did too, though she covered it with one hand as if laughter violated the mood. The fourth avocado was perfect. I mashed it with salt and half a lime. Ruth got the chips. We stood at the counter eating emergency guacamole in our pajamas, not discussing our daughter. At 11, Mallory texted, You had no right to tell Uncle Peter our personal finances. I showed Ruth. You didn't, she said. I told him they can afford an apartment, which he probably translated into a detailed bank statement because he enjoys improving facts. I typed, Peter called me. I did not discuss your finances, Mallory replied immediately. You made us sound like freeloaders. I wrote 3 different answers and erased all of them. Ruth waited. What should I say? I asked. What do you want to say? That isn't helpful. It's the only helpful question. I looked at the screen. I want to talk to you, I typed. Not through Peter, not tonight. The typing dots appeared for several seconds, then disappeared. In the morning, the house looked hungover. Bags of trash from the hurried packing sat near the garage door. A towel Mallory had used to protect a lamp lay on the stairs. The dining table was bare, except for a pale rectangle where Grant's laptop had kept dust from settling. Ruth made coffee for two and poured it the way we had, before Grant began making it strong enough to dissolve a spoon. I carried both mugs toward the back room. Coffee? I asked. I have some. I meant in here. She looked past me at the open door. No, thank you. I waited for an explanation. Ruth opened the newspaper. I took my coffee into the room alone. Everything was back where it belonged, but it did not feel restored. One record leaned at the wrong angle. My tools had been returned to drawers without order. The Zenith radio sat on the work table with its casing off and the last screw beside it. I could have repaired it in 20 minutes. Instead, I sat in my chair and listened to the house. Ruth turned newspaper pages in the kitchen. The furnace clicked. A truck passed outside. No hairdryer, no cabinet doors, no Grant saying leadership into a laptop while wearing stained shorts. The silence I had spent months seeking felt less like peace than absence. By noon, 3 relatives had called. Linda wanted to know whether Ruth was all right. My cousin Ray wanted to remind me that daughters remember these things. Ruth's sister Elaine called her directly and stayed on the phone for 45 minutes. I heard Ruth say, "No, I'm not proud of it," and later, "No, I'm not taking it back." Peter called again while I was carrying the trash to the garage. "Mallory says Grant offered to leave before this happened," he said. He did. So, why didn't he? You'd have to ask him. She says Ruth kept moving the goalposts. I nearly dropped the bag. Ruth wrote the date on the calendar. Maybe Mallory felt unwelcome. She was supposed to feel temporary. Peter sighed. "I'm trying to help." Then stopped calling me with her sentences. Somebody needs to keep communication open. Communication is open. Mallory has my number. I don't like seeing the family split. Then invite everyone to your house. Our water pressure. Goodbye, Peter. I ended the call. Ruth stood in the garage doorway. "That looks satisfying," she said. It was. "Be careful. You'll develop a taste for it." I tied the trash bag. He thinks he's mediating. He thinks he's watching a tennis match and doesn't want the ball near his drink. Grant returned the blue suitcase that afternoon. He came alone. His car was packed so tightly that a pair of shoes pressed against the rear window. Ruth opened the door but did not invite him in. "I brought this back," he said. "You could have kept it." "I thought about moving to Arizona. Wrong color for surrender." He smiled faintly and set the suitcase inside. "How's the job?" I asked. "Good. Mostly training videos so far. I learned there are 7 exciting ways to say calendar. And the hotel? Expensive. Have you found a place?" He looked toward his car. "I'm moving into a spare room tonight. A guy named Marcus from the inventory crew has one. Month to month, cash, no paperwork." "And Mallory?" Ruth asked. She found a furnished studio. The answer hung there. "You're not staying together," I said. "Not at the moment." Ruth crossed her arms. "Because of us?" "No." It came too quickly, but Grant corrected himself. "Not only because of this. The hotel had adjoining rooms, and somehow we stopped opening the door between them. I looked down at the suitcase. Grant said, "She thinks I betrayed her." "Did you?" Ruth asked. "I left with her." "That isn't what I asked." He put both hands in his coat pockets. "I told her she was wrong. About the room. About all of it. About staying. About waiting until every option felt perfect. I told her I knew we could leave and didn't push because living here was easy." "It didn't look easy," I said. "Easy and comfortable aren't the same thing." Ruth's expression shifted. She had said similar things to me in less forgiving language. Grant continued, "I should have stopped her from touching your things. I knew she was doing it. I told myself she'd move a few boxes and you'd complain. Then everybody would compromise." "You mean I would compromise?" I said. He met my eyes. "Yes." The admission hurt, but it did not surprise me. "I'm sorry," he said. Ruth studied him. "I believe you." His shoulders lowered. "That doesn't mean you get to bring us your marriage," she added. They went right back up. "I'm not asking you to fix it. You came here alone and told us you separated. Some part of you is asking for something." Grant looked at me. The old answer was already forming. "Sit down, have some coffee. Tell us what happened." I kept my mouth shut. Grant nodded slowly. "Maybe I wanted you to tell me Mallory will calm down." "She probably will," I said. Ruth glanced at me. "What?" "She probably will." Grant almost laughed. Ruth said, "Mallory calming down is not the same as Mallory understanding what she did. Don't confuse the quiet afterward with a solution." Nobody had to ask whether she was speaking only to Grant. He left 5 minutes later. Ruth watched from the window as he shifted boxes to make room for the suitcase. I feel sorry for him, I said. So do I. He's trying. I know. Do you think we were too hard on him? Ruth turned from the window. You are already looking for a side door. A side door to what? To rescuing Mallory. If Grant is less guilty, then she's more hurt. If she's more hurt, you can go help. I'm standing in the living room, your body is. I wanted to argue. Instead, I picked up the towel from the stairs and took it to the laundry room. The next day, Mallory's mail arrived. A credit card statement, 2 catalogs, and an envelope from her insurance company. In the guest room closet, Ruth found a garment bag containing 3 of Mallory's dresses. Grant's sock was still on our dresser. I put everything in a box. Then I added a container of soup, a loaf of bread, coffee, paper towels, and the good can opener, because Furnished Studios never had good can openers. Ruth came into the kitchen while I was taping the box. What's that? Things Mallory left. Ruth lifted the loaf. She left bread? I thought she might need groceries. Did she ask? She shouldn't have to ask for food. She has money. That's not the same as having someone look after you. Ruth put the bread back. Who are you looking after? Our daughter, or yourself? I set down the tape. She's alone in some furnished apartment. Her husband just moved into a stranger's spare room. Half the family is talking about her, because she called them. She's still hurting. So are you. I'm not the one who got thrown out. Ruth flinched. I heard what I had said only after her face changed. That came out wrong. No, she said quietly. It came out exactly the way you feel. I agreed with you. You agreed when Mallory made it impossible not to. That isn't fair. There's that door again. I stepped away from the box. What do you want from me, Ruth? I didn't stop you. I told Peter the truth. I haven't called Mallory. I want you to understand that not calling for 48 hours is not punishment you're nobly enduring. I don't think that. You pack soup. People eat soup. She closed her eyes. I pulled on my coat, carried the box to the car, and backed out before she could say anything else. Mallory's studio was 20 minutes away. I knew the address because Grant had texted it with the hotel information. I pictured the room without trying, beige walls, unfamiliar dishes, a bed too close to the kitchen, Mallory opening the door and seeing the box, her face softening despite herself. At the second traffic light, my phone buzzed. Ruth had sent one message. Are you helping her, or making sure she can't stay angry at you? The light turned green. A horn sounded behind me. I drove another 4 blocks, pulled into a gas station, and sat with both hands on the steering wheel. The soup shifted in the box when I turned the car around. Ruth was in the back room when I came home. She sat in her chair with the unopened newspaper on her lap. The repaired Zenith played softly beside her, though neither of us had put the casing back on. I carried the box into the kitchen. She didn't ask, I said. No. I'll text her about the mail. That makes sense. I stood in the doorway. Is there room for me? Ruth looked at my empty chair. It's your room, she said. That isn't what I asked. For the first time in days, her face softened. She moved the newspaper from her lap to the table between us. I sat down, and neither of us tried to repair the radio. The radio stayed open for 3 more days. Normally, an unfinished repair bothered me. I would think about it while brushing my teeth, picture the loose parts while trying to sleep, and return to the table before breakfast. This time, I left the casing off. The 12 screws rested in a glass dish where nobody could mistake them for cereal. Ruth sat with me each evening. Sometimes she read. Sometimes we listened to the radio's soft electrical hum between stations. On the 3rd night, she said, "You can fix it." I know. Then why haven't you? I'm enjoying the suspense. You know who else says that? People who don't know how to fix something. I picked up the screwdriver. The tuning needle had been catching because a filament had slipped from the pulley. It took 11 minutes to reset, tension, and test it. I put the casing on, replaced the screws, and turned the dial. A trumpet came through the speaker, faint at first, then clear. Ruth closed her book. There, I said. You look disappointed. I thought it would take longer. That's because you've been avoiding it for 3 days. I was being patient. She smiled. Of course you were. Mallory answered my message about her mail with 1 sentence. Leave it outside Saturday. No hello. No thank you. No indication of whether she wanted the dresses, soup, or good can opener. I removed the groceries and left the sealed box on the front porch at 9 Saturday morning. Ruth and I went to the diner where I had taken Grant after he quit. The same waitress was working. She called Ruth honey and called me trouble, possibly because I ordered extra bacon. I was supposed to have lunch with you that day, I said. I remember. I came home with cold fries. I remember those better than the apology. I apologized. You explained why the fries were cold. It had the shape of an apology. I poured syrup on my pancakes. Are we going to revisit every mistake I've made? We don't have time. Ruth drank her coffee, but I saw the corner of her mouth move. My phone buzzed against the table. I turned it over without looking. That could be Mallory, she said. It could be Peter. You should destroy it. It's still under contract. The phone buzzed again. I wanted to look. The urge was physical, like an itch beneath a cast. Ruth noticed. You can check it. I invited you to lunch. You're allowed to own a phone during lunch. I'm also allowed not to answer it. That sounded more noble than it was. I was still thinking about the phone instead of listening to Ruth tell me about a novel Elaine had recommended. She stopped in the middle of a sentence. What? I asked. You're performing restraint now. I haven't touched it. Your entire face has touched it. I turned the phone over. The first message was from Peter, asking whether I still had his socket wrench. The second was a motion alert from our doorbell camera. The image showed Mallory standing on our porch. I opened the live view. She had the box in one arm and was trying her old key in the lock with the other. My chest tightened. What is it? Ruth asked. I showed her. The key turned, but the deadbolt did not. Ruth had changed the cylinder the morning after they left. She had not asked me. I had not objected. Mallory tried again. Then she looked toward the camera. Even through the small screen, I saw the injury on her face. She's checking whether we changed it, I said. We did. She knows that now. Yes. Mallory lowered the key. For a second, I thought she might knock. Instead, she placed it on top of the box, carried everything to her car, and left. I set the phone down. Ruth said, "Do you want to go home?" "No, you can. I don't want to." This time, I meant it. Wanting to see Mallory was not the same as wanting to chase her. I picked up my fork. Ruth watched me take one bite. Those pancakes are cold. They're still pancakes. Growth. When we returned, Grant's sock was tucked beneath the doormat. I held it up. That feels pointed. She has a sense of theater, gets it from your side. Your brother brings gas station pie to Thanksgiving. That's not theater, that's negligence. We put the sock in an envelope and mailed it to Grant at Marcus's house. Grant called when he received it. You mailed one sock? We were practicing boundaries. For the price of postage, you could have included its partner. We don't have its partner. That's cruel. He sounded better. The job was going well. He had made his first sale to a restaurant owner in Ohio who had complained about the software for 40 minutes before buying it. I knew how to talk to him, Grant said. He sounded like Curtis with sleep apnea. That's a marketable skill. Marcus's spare room had a desk, a narrow bed, and a closet full of fishing equipment. Grant had moved the rods into one corner and bought a lamp. He talked about the room too long, which told me he was not calling about the room. "How's Mallory?" I asked. He was silent. "That's why you called." "I didn't say that. You described a closet for 5 minutes. She won't talk to me unless it's about apartments. Are you looking together? She keeps sending me listings. Then she says she doesn't know whether she wants me in them." "What do you want?" "I want my wife back." That's broad. I want her to stop treating every disagreement like a loyalty test. "Have you told her?" "She says I failed the biggest one." I turned toward the kitchen. Ruth was rinsing vegetables at the sink, close enough to hear my side, but not his. "You need to talk to her," I said. "I'm trying." "No, you're talking to me about her. I made that mistake for months." Grant let out a long breath. "I don't know what to say to her. Neither do I." "I thought you always knew what to say. I knew what ended the conversation." "That sounds useful right now. It isn't." He was quiet again. "Fair enough," he said. After we hung up, Ruth set a bowl of carrots on the counter. "You told him no." "I told him I didn't know. For you, that's practically a locked gate." I took a carrot. "I'm becoming difficult. Don't overdo it." The house settled into its former shape, but Ruth and I did not. Before Mallory and Grant moved in, we had assumed that being in the same room meant being together. Now, we noticed the difference. I noticed when Ruth stopped speaking because I was half listening. She noticed when I offered to repair something, rather than respond to what she had said. One evening, she told me Elaine wanted her to join a book group. That sounds nice, I said. You hate book groups. I'm not joining. You said they're organized arguments with snacks. They are. So, why does it sound nice? Because you might enjoy an organized argument where I'm not present. She studied me. That was almost honest. I'm tired. Honesty often resembles fatigue. She joined the group. The first meeting was on a Tuesday. I ate a sandwich alone and discovered the quiet felt different when Ruth had chosen to be somewhere else. It had edges. I went into the back room, turned on the zenith, and lasted 9 minutes before switching it off. When Ruth came home, I was in the kitchen washing my plate. How was it? I asked. 6 women disliked the book for 8 incompatible reasons. You must have had a wonderful time. I did. I wanted to tell her I had missed her. The sentence felt embarrassingly large for 2 hours. I'm glad you went, I said. She touched my arm as she passed. It was not forgiveness. It was contact. Mallory remained silent toward us, but not toward everyone else. Peter reported her opinions until I stopped answering his calls. Linda left Ruth a voicemail saying she understood both sides, which is what people say when they want credit for compassion without the burden of judgment. Elaine did not offer an opinion. She invited Ruth to lunch and asked whether she wanted to talk about anything else. Ruth came home with a secondhand lamp and said it was the nicest conversation she'd had in months. In the middle of January, Peter sent a group message about Ruth's birthday. Sunday at 5, like always. Linda can do chicken. Mallory, you bring salad. Dan, keep Ruth out of kitchen. Mallory responded before I did. We'll be there. We. I stared at that one word. Grant and Mallory had apparently begun talking again, though neither had told us. Peter replied with a thumbs up. Linda sent 3 balloon symbols. Elaine asked whether anyone had spoken to the birthday woman. Ruth was sitting across from me in the back room. I handed her the phone. She read the exchange. I don't want that dinner, she said. You always have it. I know. Maybe it's a chance. For what? Everybody to eat chicken while pretending Mallory didn't tell you to leave. She's willing to come. She's willing to attend a party she didn't ask me about. I took the phone back. What do you want to do? I want dinner with you. Somewhere I don't have to clear plates. That's it? That isn't small. I didn't mean, I know. I typed into the group message. No gathering Sunday. Ruth and I have plans, Peter replied almost immediately. Since when? Since now, I wrote. Mallory's name appeared, then disappeared. A separate message came to me. Mom doesn't want me there? I showed Ruth. She looked away. That's not what I said. What should I tell her? Ruth's eyes flashed. You keep asking me to write your lines. You're the one whose birthday it is, and you're the one she addressed. I looked down at the screen. Your mother doesn't want a family dinner that pretends nothing happened, I wrote. Mallory answered. So she's punishing me on her birthday. I typed no, erased it, then typed, that isn't what this is. Her response came quickly. It's exactly what this is. She won. You got your room. Grant and I almost separated. How much more do you need? I read the message twice. Ruth said, Don't answer angry. I'm not angry. You're holding the phone like Peter held that turkey instruction sheet. I set it on the table. Mallory sent another message. If you don't want me in the family, just say it. I could see the trap because Ruth had spent months teaching me to see it. If I reassured Mallory without naming what she had done, we returned to the old arrangement. If I refused reassurance, she would treat the refusal as proof. I picked up the phone again. Meet me tomorrow at the diner on Clark, noon, just us. She did not answer for 13 minutes. I counted every one. Finally, 3 dots appeared. Fine, she wrote, but I'm not apologizing for trying to protect my husband. Ruth read it over my shoulder. What will you say? She asked. I don't know. She waited. I added, and I'm not asking you to tell me. Ruth rested her hand on the back of my chair. Good, she said. Then maybe you'll say something true. I arrived at the diner 20 minutes early and took a booth where I could see the door. That was a mistake. Every time it opened, cold air crossed the floor and lifted the edge of my napkin. I watched strangers come in, stamping snow from their shoes, and with each one I felt the same brief relief, followed by the same dread. The waitress brought coffee. No trouble today? She asked, waiting to find out. Trouble usually runs late. Mallory arrived 12 minutes after noon. She wore a dark coat belted tight at the waist and carried the purse she had dropped on our chair the night we first discussed moving in. She saw me, hesitated, then walked over without removing her gloves. "You've been here a while," she said. "I came early, I came on time." I looked at the clock above the register. "It's 12:12. Parking was awful." "Okay." The word bothered her. My not disputing the obvious had always bothered Mallory more than an argument. She sat across from me. The waitress returned and called her honey. Mallory ordered coffee and nothing else. I had spent 20 minutes studying the menu without reading it, so I ordered a turkey sandwich because the word happened to be in front of me. "We're having dinner Sunday," I said. "Just your mother and me." I understood the message. She didn't cancel to punish you. It doesn't matter why she thinks she did it. That sentence doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense. Mom always has everyone over for her birthday. Suddenly I'm not welcome. She doesn't want Peter or Elaine there either. They weren't thrown out of your house. No. Mallory removed her gloves one finger at a time. Her old house key was attached to the ring she set beside her coffee cup. "You could have put that in the box," I said. "I wanted you to see it. I saw you try the lock." Her face colored. "You watch me?" The camera notified me. "Of course you changed it. Your mother did. And you agreed." "Yes." She looked toward the window. I had expected anger. The shame was harder to sit across from. "Why did you try the key?" I asked. "I don't know. You wanted to come inside. I wanted to know if I could. That isn't the same thing." "I know." The waitress delivered my sandwich and Mallory's coffee. Mallory added cream, but no sugar. She had taken it that way since she was 22, and I still had the urge to push the sugar toward her. I kept my hands beside my plate. "How's the studio?" I asked. "Furnished." "That's not how it is. It has a bed, a table, and a painting of a sailboat. What else do you want? Are you comfortable?" "No." She said it sharply, then looked angry that I had made room for an honest answer. "Grant's back there most nights," she added. "I'm glad you're talking. We never stopped talking. He said you would only discuss apartments." Her eyes snapped to mine. "He told you that?" "He called about the sock. You mailed it to him. We didn't have the other one. That isn't funny." "It was a little funny. You two have had plenty to say to each other." "We talked once. About our marriage." He tried. "I told him to talk to you." She leaned back. "You really enjoy this new version of yourself." "What version?" "The one who acts like setting a house on fire is healthy because he finally said no to something. I didn't set anything on fire. Grant moved out. Grant made that decision because you and Mom humiliated him." I put down my sandwich. "We asked him to leave after you ordered me out." "I did not order you out of the house. You said, 'Give him your room or leave.' I meant leave the conversation. Leave the room. Stop making everybody miserable over a space you barely used. You packed my things. I moved records. You cleared my work table. Because Grant needed to work. He told you not to. He was trying to keep the peace. No. He knew it was wrong and hoped I would give in after you did it." Her mouth tightened. "That sounds like something Mom said. Grant said it to me." She looked down at her coffee. For a moment, the restaurant moved around us without either of us. Silverware struck plates. A man near the window laughed too loudly. The kitchen bell rang twice. Mallory said, "He was under incredible pressure. I know. He finally had a chance to recover. I know. And you cared more about a radio." "It wasn't about the radio. It was a room full of things you don't need. It was mine. There. That. Everything was yours. Your garage, your chair, your table, your room. We lived in that house for 7 months, and every day you found some way to remind us it wasn't ours. It wasn't." She stared at me. "I'm not saying you weren't family," I continued. "I'm saying staying in our house did not make it your house. You offered. For 8 weeks. We didn't force you to extend it. No, I did that. Then why am I the villain because you couldn't tell the truth?" "You aren't a villain. That's generous. You're my daughter. You were scared for your husband, and you did something cruel. Those things can all be true." Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back angrily. "You don't get to call me cruel. Why? Because you make people feel crazy. You say yes when you mean no. You smile, disappear into that room, and let Mom become furious for both of you. Then one day, you decide you've been mistreated. That's true. She had been ready to strike again. My agreement stopped her. I continued. I did say yes when I meant not this long. I left your mother to enforce boundaries I agreed with. I kept extending things because I was afraid you'd feel unwelcome. I did feel unwelcome. You were supposed to feel temporary. She folded her arms tightly. I handled it badly, I said. For months. So you admit it, yes. And Mom complained about you too. Yes. She told me you vanish whenever things get hard. She was right. Then why am I being punished for saying the same thing? Because you didn't just say it. You used her anger to claim she would choose you over me. I was defending her. She didn't ask you to. She shouldn't have to ask. No. But you should listen when she tells you to stop. Mallory looked at me as if I had betrayed some private understanding between us. Did she send you here to say all this? No. So, these are your thoughts now? They should have been my words then. She laughed bitterly. Congratulations. You finally found them. I let that sit because she had earned part of it. The waitress refilled our coffee. Mallory thanked her in a perfectly normal voice, then waited until she walked away. I'm sorry I moved your things, she said. The apology came so suddenly that I almost accepted it on reflex. Mallory continued. I should have waited until you got home and explained why Grant needed the room. That isn't the problem. I said, I'm sorry. You're sorry you didn't persuade me first. What do you want, Dad? You want me on my knees because I touched some records? I want you to understand that you told me to leave my home. I explained what I meant. You explained what you wish you had meant. Her face hardened. I said, I need you to apologize for using your mother against me, for assuming I could be moved out of the way because you needed something, for acting like my place in the family depended on giving you the answer you wanted. That's dramatic. It happened. You are not disposable. You treated me that way. I was angry. So was your mother. You still want what she said to count. Mallory looked toward the door. I knew she was leaving before she reached for her gloves. Sit down, I said. I came, I listened, I apologized. You defended the decision and apologized for the method. I don't know what magic sentence you're waiting for. It isn't magic. Then tell me what to say. The request sounded so much like me asking Ruth for lines that I nearly smiled. I didn't. If I tell you, they're my words. She shoved her hands into her gloves. Mom complained about you for months, she said. She sat in that kitchen and told me she felt alone. I was the one listening while you hid. Now she packs our bags, and suddenly the two of you are some perfect team. We're not a perfect team. You chose her. She's my wife. I'm your daughter. Those aren't opposing positions. They were that day. No, you made them opposing positions because you were sure she'd choose you. Mallory stood. People at nearby tables glanced over, then looked away. I stayed seated. Her voice dropped. I was trying to protect my husband. From what? From feeling useless. I thought of Grant in the parking lot holding his tie, Grant on his knees searching for one small screw. And what did you protect him from doing? I asked. She stared at me. Finding a place, taking a job you didn't like, telling you no, that is between me and Grant. Yes, it always was. You brought it into my room. She picked up her purse. If you don't want me Sunday, fine. That isn't what I want. Could have fooled me. She walked out. The door opened, cold air lifted the napkin, and then she was gone. I did not follow her. My body expected me to. My legs felt ready beneath the table. I pictured her reaching her car, crying where strangers could see. I pictured tapping on the window, telling her she was loved, allowing love to blur everything we had just said. I stayed in the booth. The waitress approached cautiously. You want pie? What kind? Apple. Is it good? No, but it's pie. I ordered it. Ruth was in the living room when I came home. She had taken off her shoes and was rubbing one foot through her sock. How did it go? She asked. She walked out. I'm sorry. She apologized for moving the records before talking to me. Ruth lowered her foot. She still thinks the room was the practical solution, I said. She still thinks she was protecting Grant. She said you complained about me, and I told her you were right. I wasn't right about everything. You were right about enough. Ruth watched me. Did you chase her? No. Did you want to? Yes. I sat beside her. She looks like she hated me. She doesn't. Don't fix the sentence because it scares you. Ruth winced, hearing her own words returned. All right, she said. She looked like she hated you. Thank you. You're welcome. We sat in silence. After a while, I said, I think I taught her that no wasn't real. How? Every time she pushed, I gave another week, another room, another favor. Then I expected her to understand the boundary I wouldn't hold. That part is yours, I know. The ultimatum is hers. I know that too. Ruth leaned her head against my shoulder. On Sunday, I took her to a small Italian restaurant across town. She wore a red scarf Elaine had given her, and I wore the sport coat Ruth said made me look least like I had come to repair the plumbing. We silenced our phones before ordering. Halfway through dinner, Ruth reached across the table. "Stop looking at the door," she said. "I'm not. You've checked it 6 times. I'm watching the waiter. The waiter is behind you." I looked at her hand resting near mine. "What if she doesn't come back?" I asked. Ruth's fingers closed around mine. "Then we will grieve that," she said. "We will not purchase her return with your dignity." I looked down at our hands. I don't know who I am to her if I'm not fixing something. Her father. That didn't feel like enough. Maybe because you never made her find out. The waiter brought tiramisu with a candle. Ruth laughed when he pronounced her name wrong, and I sang quietly because she hated public singing and loved me for doing it badly. My phone remained face down in my coat pocket. When we got home, there was no car in the driveway, no card on the porch, and no message from Mallory. There was one voicemail from Grant. He wished Ruth a happy birthday. He said he hoped the dinner had been good. He did not mention Mallory. Ruth listened twice, then set the phone down. "She remembered," I said. "I know." "How?" "Grant remembers dates." I looked toward the dark front window. Ruth reached for my hand again. This time, when the house went quiet, I stayed where she could see me. The next morning, Ruth's phone buzzed while she was making toast. She read the message and placed the phone beside the butter dish. "Mallory?" I asked. "Yes." "What did she say?" "Happy birthday. I'm sorry you didn't want me there." I waited. Ruth spread butter all the way to the corners of the toast. "That's impressive." "What is?" 7 words carrying a full set of luggage. "Are you going to answer?" "Yes." She typed with one finger, slowly enough that I could hear each tap. "Do you want help?" I asked. "No, I deserve that." She read her reply aloud before sending it. "I love you. I did not want a family dinner that pretended nothing happened. When you are ready to talk honestly about what you said to your father, I am ready to listen." "That's good," I said. "It's true." Mallory answered before the toast cooled. "I already apologized to him. Apparently it wasn't specific enough to earn my place in the family." Ruth handed me the phone. She apologized for moving my things without asking. "That's not nothing." "No, it's also not the thing." "No." I gave the phone back. Ruth locked the screen and ate her toast. "You're not responding?" "I already told her what I'm ready for." "What if she thinks you're ignoring her?" "She'll be correct." Ruth took another bite. I had always believed that if a conversation was going badly, more words improved the odds. Ruth understood that sometimes additional words merely provided more surfaces for an argument to cling to. I tried her method. For 9 days, Mallory sent nothing. I did not call. I fixed a loose hinge on the guest room closet. I sorted the Christmas decorations Grant and Mallory had displaced. I put the floral curtains through the wash and discovered one had a tear along the hem. Ruth found me at the dining table trying to thread a needle. "What happened?" she asked. "Curtain, I can see that." "Why are you sewing?" "It's torn. You can fix radios, but not curtains. I'm broadening my services." She took the needle from me, threaded it on the first try, and handed it back. "That was showing off," I said. "You've been pushing the same frayed end at the hole for 5 minutes." I was developing a strategy. You make ordinary failure sound very dignified. I repaired the tear badly. Ruth left it that way. Peter came over on Saturday carrying a gas station pie. "You know there are bakeries," I said. "They close early. It's 11 in the morning. This was convenient." Linda had sent him. I knew because he wiped his shoes without being asked and said, "I'm not here to take sides," before removing his coat. Ruth took the pie and read the label. Cherry-flavored filling. "What else would cherry pie have?" Peter asked. "Cherries." He followed me into the back room. Ruth did not join us. Peter lowered himself into her chair, then stood again when I looked at him. "That's Ruth's," I said. "I've sat there before. She's reclaimed it." He took the small wooden chair near the shelves. It was not comfortable. I did not apologize. "Mallory's a mess," he said. "She's spoken to you?" "Linda." Mallory spoke to Linda. Same difference. No. It's a chain with you at the weakest link. He frowned. I'm trying to help you two find your way back. We know each other's addresses. She thinks you hate her. She doesn't think that. She said it. She knows I don't hate her. She thinks if she says hate, I'll rush to prove love. Peter shifted on the chair. That sounds a little cold. It feels cold. So call her. And say what? That you love her? I told her. Tell her again. How many times before she has to answer for what she did? He looked toward the radio. You're her father. You're supposed to be the bigger person. You said that already. It remains true. Linda ever tell you to get out of your house? Not seriously. What does seriously mean? He considered it. I leaned forward. If Linda emptied your fishing cabinet and gave it to Elaine, then told you to leave when you objected, would apologizing for touching the lures be enough? I don't have a fishing cabinet. You have an entire closet full of golf equipment you use twice a year. Golf equipment is different. How? It costs more. I stared at him. All right, he said. I understand the comparison. Do you? Don't start talking like Ruth. She's contagious. Peter rubbed his knee. The wooden chair had begun teaching him something. Mallory says you were never clear about the room. I told her it wasn't available. She says you let Grant use it for interviews. He asked. So, this is about asking? It's about hearing no. Peter opened his mouth, then shut it. I said, I miss her. I hate knowing she's hurt. I also know that every time you carry one of her messages, she gets to avoid talking to me. I'm not carrying a message. You brought pie. That's from me. Then why are you here? He looked toward the hallway. Ruth called, I can still hear both of you? Peter sighed. Linda wants everybody together again. Tell Linda to call Mallory. She has. Then your work is done. He stood, relieved to escape the chair. At the doorway, he paused. For what it's worth, I wouldn't give up this room either. It isn't worth much. I know. The curtains are terrible. They're in the guest room. Then these are worse. After he left, Ruth cut the pie. The filling was purple. You let him off easily, she said. I made him sit in the wooden chair. Cruel. We ate 2 slices anyway. The silence from Mallory stretched through another week. It was not complete silence. Her name surfaced in other people's sentences. Elaine had seen her at a grocery store. Linda said she looked tired. Grant did not mention her when he called to ask how to remove a stripped screw from a desk he had bought secondhand. Rubber band between the screwdriver and the head, I told him. That works, sometimes. And if it doesn't, pliers. You should sell advice online. I gave you 2 methods. Don't commercialize it. A few days later, he asked whether he could stop by. Ruth was at her book group, and I considered telling him to wait until she was home. Then I recognized what I was doing, using Ruth's presence as permission so I would not have to decide. What do you need? I asked. To talk? About Mallory? Yes. Then no. He was quiet, I added. Not because I don't care. Because if you and I keep discussing her, she gets to make me the third person in your marriage without being in the room. I'm not asking you to mediate. What are you asking? I don't know. When you know, call. He did not call for 4 days. When he did, his voice sounded steadier. I told her, I'm not moving into the studio, he said. I closed my eyes. Grant, I know. You said you don't want to discuss her? Then why are you discussing her? I'm discussing me. Convenient. I told her I love her and want to live with her. I also told her I'm not coming back because she found an apartment and got lonely. I said nothing. She thinks I'm punishing her, he continued. I'm not. I just don't want to keep proving loyalty by agreeing with her version of every argument. What did she say? That you taught me to talk like that. I didn't. I know. I heard Marcus in the background asking where the coffee filters were. Grant covered the phone and answered him. Then he said, I'm staying here another month. That's your decision. Yes. You don't sound happy. I'm not. But I sound like I made it. That was true. Good luck with the screw, I said. The rubber band worked. After we hung up, I almost called Mallory. I imagined her hearing my voice and immediately knowing Grant had spoken to me. No matter what I said, it would become evidence that the men were aligned against her. More important, calling would let me step into the space Grant had finally refused to fill for her. I put the phone in a drawer until Ruth came home. She found it while looking for a pen. Why is your phone with the batteries? I was not calling Mallory. Do you often need a locked container to accomplish that? It's a drawer. You look guilty. I talked to Grant. I told her what he had said. Ruth sat beside me at the kitchen table. How do you feel? I feel sorry for both of them. That isn't a feeling. It's an evaluation. Sad. There. And relieved. She waited. I'm relieved he finally told her no, which makes me feel like a bad father. Why? Because his no hurts her. So did all your yeses. I looked at the drawer. Ruth said, "You can miss Mallory without protecting her from every consequence." I know. Knowing seems to be your favorite first step. It has low risk. She put her hand over mine. We began planning a spring trip. Nothing ambitious. A drive through Kentucky, 2 nights in Louisville, another in Lexington. No schedule tight enough to turn a wrong exit into an emergency. We had talked about taking it the previous year and postponed because Grant's interviews kept creating new dates we needed to be home. Ruth spread maps across the dining table where his resumes had been. You know phones have maps, I said. Phones also have Peter, and you keep answering. Less often. I'm not trusting our vacation to your progress. She circled a small hotel and told me not to search for a cheaper one. I searched anyway. Found one with alarming reviews about plumbing and circled hers. For the first time since Mallory left, we made plans that did not account for whether she might need us. The following Tuesday, Ruth found one final box beneath a tarp in the garage. Mallory's name was written across it in Grant's handwriting. Inside were framed photographs, winter boots, 2 cookbooks, and a ceramic bowl Ruth had given her years before. I texted Mallory. Found another box. Tell me where you want it. Her answer came an hour later. I'll get it. When? No response. I moved the box near the garage door. For 3 days, it sat there. Each time a car slowed outside, I looked up. On Friday afternoon, I was in the back room installing a new cord on a table lamp when the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands and went to the front door. Mallory stood on the porch alone. She looked thinner than she had at the diner. Her hair was pulled back carelessly, and she held the old house key in her open palm. I came for the box, she said. I looked at the key. You already made the point. I know. She closed her fingers around it. Behind me, the Zenith radio played softly through the open back room door. Mallory looked past my shoulder. Can I come in? She asked. For once she was waiting for the answer. I stepped aside. Yes. Mallory entered carefully, as if the floor plan might have changed. She closed the door behind her and placed the old key on the narrow table in the hallway. Mom home? She went to Elaine's. Book group? That was Tuesday. I don't know her schedule anymore. The sentence was not an accusation, but it wanted to become one. Mallory seemed to hear that too. She pressed her lips together and looked toward the garage. The box is out there, I said. She nodded but did not move. Her eyes went past me again, following the music from the back room. The door stood open. From the entryway, she could see the edge of my work table and Ruth's chair beneath the window. You put it all back, she said. Yes. Exactly the same? Mostly. What changed? I replaced the lamp cord. She looked at me. It was frayed. That's what changed? And one of the records has a bent cover. Her face tightened. I said I was sorry about the records. You apologized for moving them before talking to me. I came for the box. All right. I opened the garage door. Mallory followed. The box sat beside Ruth's car. I bent to lift it. I can carry it, she said. I know. I straightened without touching it. Mallory looked around the garage. The garden cart was back against the wall. Both cars fit again. A pale rectangle on the concrete showed where Grant's exercise bench had stood. I forgot how much space there was, she said. There wasn't. She touched the name written across the box. Grant wrote that. I recognized the handwriting. He labels better than I do. His labels come off. She almost smiled. I waited for her to pick up the box. She did not. Is he still at Marcus's? I asked. Yes. How's the studio? Still has a sailboat. I nodded. He won't move in with me, she said. That's between you and Grant. I know. She said it quickly, not defensively. He told me what you said, she continued, about not wanting to be the third person in our marriage. I should have said it sooner. He says that about everything now. I should have said it sooner. Is he wrong? No. She folded her arms against the cold in the garage. I thought you talked him into it, she said. Into what? Leaving, staying at Marcus's, suddenly saying no to everything. I didn't. I know that now. How? Because he's saying no to you too. That surprised me. What did I ask? He didn't tell you we were looking at a place together. No, he didn't tell you he got another offer from Curtis. No, he didn't tell you he turned it down without asking my permission. No. Mallory glanced toward me. You really don't know. I really don't. She looked at the box again. Grant said if I wanted to fix our marriage, I had to stop treating every person who disagreed with me like they'd switched teams. That sounds reasonable. It felt cruel. Reasonable things often do when they arrive late. She gave me a tired look. Is that from Mom? No. I thought of that. Congratulations. Thank you. Mallory rubbed both hands over her face. When she lowered them, her eyes were wet. I didn't come here because of Grant. All right, I mean, I did partly. Everything is partly because of something else. But he doesn't know I'm here. Why not? Because I didn't want this to be another thing I did to get him to come home. The answer mattered. I let it matter, without praising her for it. Mallory walked back into the house. I followed. She stopped at the doorway of the back room, but did not enter. The room was ordinary. My records stood on the shelves. The Zenith played beside the repaired lamp. A newspaper lay folded on Ruth's chair, and 2 coffee mugs from that morning rested on the small table between us. I thought you'd changed it, Mallory said. Into what? I don't know. A workshop. Something impressive? It is a workshop. You know what I mean. I don't. She gestured at the room. Something worth all of this. I felt the old anger rise, then settle. It didn't have to be worth it to you. I know. Her voice broke on the last word. She turned away from the room. I kept thinking about what you said at the diner, that I apologized for the method, not the decision. I waited. I still think Grant needed a room with a door. He did. She looked at me, startled. He needed one, I said. That didn't make this one his. No. You could have rented the desk. We could afford it. You could have taken an apartment. We could afford that too. You could have asked me for a schedule. I didn't think I should have to ask. I know. She looked down at the floor. I thought if I explained it strongly enough, you would give in, she said. Then when you didn't, I got angry because you weren't being who you always are. Useful, no. She shook her head. Easy, that was harder to hear. You were always easy, she continued. I don't mean weak. I knew you could handle things. I knew you'd fix the car or the wall or whatever went wrong. But you were easy to move around. If I got upset, you changed the plan. If Mom said no, you found a compromise that was basically yes, with a date attached. That's true. So, when you said the room wasn't available, I didn't believe you. You heard me. I heard the words. I didn't believe they were real. She wiped beneath one eye with the side of her thumb, and Mom had complained about you. I thought she was as tired of it as I was. I thought if I pushed hard enough, she'd back me. You counted on her choosing you. Yes. It was the first time she had said it without defending the choice. Mallory turned toward me fully. I moved your things after you told me no. I used Mom's anger to make it sound like you didn't belong here. I told you to leave your own house because you wouldn't solve our problem the way I wanted. Her breathing had gone uneven, but she kept going. Then I kept saying, I meant leave the room because saying what I actually said made me sound horrible. You were angry. I was cruel. The word came out quietly. I'm sorry, she said. Not for how it sounded. Not because Mom canceled her dinner or because Grant moved out. I'm sorry I treated you like your place here depended on giving us what we wanted. I'm sorry I thought you would always fold, and I'm sorry I got angry when you didn't. I had imagined that apology. In some versions, it restored everything immediately. I hugged her, Ruth came home, and the family rearranged itself into a happier shape before dinner. The real apology hurt. Thank you, I said. Mallory waited for more. I love you, her face crumpled. Do you forgive me? Yes. You don't sound like it. I'm learning not to use my tone to erase the difficult part. She laughed through her tears. I put my arms around her. She held on harder than I expected. For a few seconds, she was not a villain or a wounded daughter, or the woman who had emptied my room. She was Mallory, which included all of those things and more. When we stepped apart, I said, I owe you an apology too. You don't have to do that because I did. I know, she wiped her face. I taught you that. My no wasn't real, I said. I let you believe every limit could be negotiated if you were upset enough. I kept helping after help became avoidance, and I let your mother carry the anger so I could be the one everybody liked. I didn't think of you that way. You called me first when things broke, because you know how to fix things, and because I rarely asked whether fixing them was good for you. She looked toward the kitchen. I also made you think Mom and I weren't a team, I said. That was unfair to her. I'm sorry, Mallory nodded. But I'm not sorry we asked you to leave. I know. The front door opened. Ruth came in carrying a paper shopping bag. She saw the key on the table first, then saw Mallory beside me. Nobody spoke. Ruth closed the door. Mallory's posture changed. Her shoulders drew back as if preparing for impact. I came for the box, she said. It's in the garage, Ruth replied. I know. Ruth set the shopping bag on the table. Did you get it? Not yet. I could feel both of them waiting for me to translate the room. I said nothing. Mallory looked at me, then back at her mother. I also came to apologize. Ruth took off her coat and hung it in the closet. She did not hurry, and she did not rescue Mallory from the weight. Okay, she said. Mallory's hands twisted together. I shouldn't have used what you told me about Dad, she began. You were frustrated, and I turned it into evidence that you wanted him gone. I never wanted him gone. I know. Do you? Yes. Mallory looked toward the brown overnight bag, though it was no longer visible, and she had never known about it. I thought you would choose me because Dad always gave in before you had to choose anything. I thought I was helping you say what you couldn't. I have never had trouble saying things. Mallory almost smiled. No, Ruth crossed her arms. I told him you were tired of him, Mallory continued. I put words in your mouth. Then when you packed our things, I acted like you had betrayed me instead of hearing what you were saying. What was I saying? That I didn't get to decide who belonged in your marriage. Ruth's arms loosened. Mallory took a breath. I'm sorry I made you defend Dad in your own house. I'm sorry I made your birthday about whether you still love me. And I'm sorry I told everyone you threw us out because of a room. Ruth's eyes filled, but her voice remained steady. Why now? Mallory looked at the open back room door. Because nothing dramatic happened, she said. The studio stayed uncomfortable. Grant stayed at Marcus's. The key didn't work. Nobody came to fix it for me. She looked at me, and I kept waiting for Dad to call and make the apology easier. When he didn't, I had to hear what he'd already said. Ruth nodded slowly. I believe you're sorry, she said. Mallory's face tightened, waiting for the rest. I love you, Ruth continued. I forgive you. I do not trust yet that the next no will be enough. That's fair. It isn't a punishment, I know. And you are not moving back here. A surprised laugh escaped Mallory. I know that too. Ruth stepped forward and hugged her. It was not the desperate embrace I had given. It was careful, almost formal at first. Then Mallory pressed her face into Ruth's shoulder, and Ruth closed her eyes. I turned toward the kitchen. Ruth said, Stay. So I did. Mallory carried the box to her car before dark. I offered once to help. She said she had it. I believed her. At the front door, she placed the old key in Ruth's hand. Can I call tomorrow? She asked. Ruth looked at me, not for an answer, just to make sure I was there. Yes, she said. Call tomorrow. Mallory drove away with the box. This time, leaving did not feel like disappearing. Mallory called the next afternoon at 2. Ruth put the phone on speaker and set it between us on the kitchen table. Hi, Mallory said. Hi, Ruth replied. I said, hello. Then all three of us waited, as if the purpose of the call might introduce itself. Mallory cleared her throat. Did you eat the cherry pie? Unfortunately, Ruth said. Uncle Peter said it was from a bakery. Uncle Peter considers any building with a cash register a bakery. Mallory laughed. The sound came through the phone, thin and cautious. We talked for 11 minutes. Nothing important happened. She told us the heat in her studio clanged at night. Ruth told her to call the landlord, then stopped and said, You know that. Mallory said yes without taking offense. I almost offered to come look at the radiator, and felt Ruth notice me almost offering. Nobody mentioned Grant. Before hanging up, Mallory said, I'll call again this week. All right, I said. She did. Trust returned in pieces too small to celebrate. Mallory came for coffee one Sunday and stayed 40 minutes. The next week, she met Ruth for lunch without asking whether I was upset about being excluded. I wasn't, mostly. When she visited the house, she did not wander upstairs. She asked to use the bathroom, even though Ruth told her she did not need permission for that. The first time she entered the kitchen, she stood with the refrigerator open and said, "Can I take this water?" "You can take water," Ruth said. "What about mustard?" "Don't push it." Mallory smiled. The old ease between them surfaced, but Ruth did not pretend caution was the same as punishment. When Mallory tried to shift a difficult conversation toward how lonely the studio felt, Ruth listened and then returned to the original subject. "You told Peter we threw you out because Grant got a job," she said. "I know. Have you corrected that?" "Not yet. Why?" "Because it's embarrassing. It was embarrassing when he called your father and lectured him." Mallory looked at me. "He did? Twice. Why didn't you tell me? What would you have done?" "Called him. That would have given him another set." Mallory took out her phone. Ruth said, "Not from here." Mallory paused. "You're not calling him from our kitchen and making us sit through it," Ruth continued. "Call him when you get home." "Okay." She put the phone away. Peter arrived 2 evenings later with a pie from an actual bakery. It came in a white box with a printed label and contained visible fruit. "What happened?" I asked. "I was misinformed. About cherries? About certain events." He held out the box. "Mallory called you." She provided context. "She told you the truth," Ruth said from behind me. Peter looked past my shoulder. I preferred context. Ruth took the pie. Peter turned to me. "I shouldn't have gotten involved. No, I thought I was helping. You weren't. I understand that now. Do you?" He frowned. "Is that a family phrase now?" "Yes," Ruth and I said together. Peter left before we could make him sit in the wooden chair. Grant stayed at Marcus's for another month. I knew because he called occasionally about the job, and only about the job. He had learned not to smuggle his marriage into conversations about software. He made sales. He traveled to Denver for 3 days of training. He discovered that independent restaurant owners would tell a stranger intimate details about their staffing problems if the stranger first complained about delivery apps. Mallory talked about him less than I expected. "We're seeing each other," she said one afternoon, while helping Ruth repot a plant. The three of us were in the kitchen. Soil covered the counter, despite Ruth putting down newspaper. "That sounds formal," I said. "It feels formal." "Is that bad?" "It's uncomfortable." Ruth pressed soil around the base of the plant. "Those aren't the same thing." Mallory looked at her. "You two have a sentence for everything now." "We had them before," Ruth said. "Your father kept leaving the room." I brushed soil from the newspaper. "I'm right here. We're very proud." Mallory smiled, then became serious. "Grant wants us to choose an apartment together," she said, "not have him move into the one I picked." "That sounds sensible," I replied. "He doesn't like the sailboat. Nobody likes the sailboat. He says I rush decisions when I'm scared." Ruth glanced at her. "Do you?" "Yes." There was no defense attached. Ruth noticed too. Mallory continued, "He takes so long to decide that I feel like nothing will happen unless I push." "That can also be true," I said. "So what do we do?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. Mallory waited. "You're doing that on purpose," she said. "Yes." "It's annoying. I'm available for radio questions." She threw a small clump of soil at me. It struck my shirt and broke apart. Ruth looked at her clean newspaper. "Both of you out," she said. Mallory and Grant found a small apartment on the second floor of a brick building. It had 1 bedroom, a narrow kitchen, and an alcove off the living room where Grant could put a desk. The alcove had no door. "He has headphones," Mallory said when she showed us the listing. "Apparently walking is not distracting," I replied. Grant asked whether I could help them move on a Saturday. The request was clear. 10 in the morning, 2 dressers, 1 dining table, boxes from the studio, and the things Grant had stored at Marcus's. He had already rented a truck. Peter was helping. Nobody needed my tools, car, garage, money, guest room, or interpretation of their marriage. "I can help until 3, I said. Mallory looked at Ruth. Ruth said, "He makes his own schedule." The move went badly in the ordinary ways. The dining table did not fit through the front door until we removed its legs. Peter carried boxes marked kitchen into the bedroom because he said the labels were too small. Grant dropped a lamp but broke only the bulb. Mallory began giving 4 instructions at once, stopped herself, and asked Grant which dresser he wanted against which wall. He answered without looking at her. She moved it there. At 2:30, I found Mallory sitting on the floor beside an open box of framed photographs. The ceramic bowl Ruth had given her rested near her knee. "You all right?" I asked. "I'm tired." "That's allowed. I keep expecting something to go wrong. Something will." "Peter's installing a shelf." A crash sounded from the bedroom. Mallory closed her eyes. "You said that on purpose." I did not know he'd provide timing. She picked up a photograph of herself with Ruth and me at a restaurant years before. She placed it on a bookshelf. "Grant and I aren't fixed," she said. "I know. We might still not make it. I know. You don't have anything better?" "No." She looked disappointed, then relieved. "Okay," she said. At 3 I left. The truck was not fully unloaded. Peter was still holding the shelf against the wrong wall. Grant asked if I could stay another hour. "I told Ruth 3, I said. "I know. Never mind." I looked at the remaining boxes. "I can come back tomorrow if you still need me." "Seriously?" "For 2 hours," Grant nodded. "We'll see what's left." The next morning, he texted that they had finished. I felt proud of them and slightly useless. Ruth found me reading the message. "You look disappointed. I offered 2 hours. They didn't need them, I know." She kissed my cheek. Terrible, isn't it? Our spring trip survived planning. Ruth packed one medium suitcase for both of us. I reminded her that the last time she packed the large blue one, it contained Grant's clothes. "That suitcase has seen enough family conflict," she said. We drove to Louisville without giving anyone a spare key. Mallory knew how to reach us, so did Grant. Neither called with an emergency. We ate dinner at a restaurant overlooking the river. Ruth ordered something she could not pronounce and liked it. I took a wrong exit outside Lexington and did not insist the sign had been misleading. "You missed the turn," Ruth said. "I did." "That's it?" "That's it." She stared at me. "Travel has changed you. Don't get attached." Mallory sent one picture while we were gone. Grant had assembled his desk in the alcove. The framed restaurant photograph sat on the shelf behind him, and the ceramic bowl held charging cables. "Looks good," I wrote. I did not suggest moving the desk closer to the outlet. When we came home, the house smelled closed up. I carried the suitcase upstairs while Ruth opened windows. In the back room, dust had settled across the work table, and the Zenith's dial had shifted slightly from the last station I had played. Nobody had been there. I turned it on and listened while it warmed. The first family dinner at our house happened on a Sunday in late spring. We invited Mallory and Grant, not Peter, not Elaine, not anybody who might turn the evening into proof that the family had been repaired. Grant brought wine, Mallory brought salad and did not rearrange Ruth's kitchen while making it. They arrived together but in separate cars because Grant had worked that afternoon. It was a small detail. Months earlier, I would have spent dinner deciding what it meant. This time, I asked whether he wanted red or white wine. "Red," he said. Mallory said, "White." Grant looked at her. "For me," she added, "see, growth. Don't ruin it." Dinner was not perfect. Mallory became defensive when Ruth asked whether the new apartment felt settled. Grant made a joke about 7 exciting words for calendar, and nobody laughed because the memory was still too close. I offered to clear plates, forgot I was holding a full glass, and poured water onto the tablecloth. Ruth handed me a towel. "Broadening your services?" she asked. "I'm developing a strategy." Mallory laughed. After dinner, Grant helped Ruth in the kitchen. I went to the back room to choose a record. I left the door open. The room had changed, though Mallory might not have noticed how. Ruth's old chair had finally begun to sag, so she had chosen a wider one, upholstered in dark green. It sat beneath the window, with her book on one arm. My work table was cluttered with radio parts. 2 coffee mugs rested near the Zenith. I put on Kind of Blue. A shadow crossed the doorway. Mallory stood there with one hand raised, her knuckles near the frame. The door was open, but she knocked anyway. "Come in," I said. She took one step, then stopped. "Grant's making coffee," she said. "He makes it too strong." I told him. He won't listen. He listens eventually. From the kitchen, Ruth told Grant where the filters were. He said he knew. A cabinet opened, then another. Mallory looked at the shelves, the records, the work table, and Ruth's new chair. "I like that color," she said. "Your mother chose it," I figured. She remained near the doorway. "Can I stay for coffee?" she asked. I moved the newspaper from the second chair. "Yes." Mallory came in and left the door open behind her.